Hi, this is Charles Hoskinson broadcasting live from warm, sunny Colorado. Always warm, always sunny, sometimes Colorado. Today is February 22nd, 2022. You know what? February 21st, but in a few hours it'll be February 22nd. We'll probably spend midnight together. Who knows? We'll see how long this goes. I am back from Louisiana. I am back from a lovely weekend pre-Mardi Gras in Nolens. We had a bunch of new legal people we hired, operations and other people for different domains because the complexity of our company has grown so much. And poor Joel, our chief counsel, is overloaded with the volume. And so we said, hey, it'd be really fun as a team building exercise, bring everybody down Louisiana, all get to know each other. So we lovely time eating beignets and redfish and lots of crab and interesting seafood. And boy, it was fun. I really enjoyed it. It was nice to see people down in Mardi Gras. We had some paparazzi down there. Some people were following me around, not sure why or who they were, but that was interesting. And it just shows you what happens when you start getting a little bigger. People start taking you too seriously. But it was a lovely time. Love the jazz, love the piano bars, and I live streamed a few things. There was one song we played, "Hey Jude," which is a McCartney song, but I know the only Beatle that I'm acquainted with is John Lennon's son, Sean Lennon. So I tweeted it at him. I said, "That's for you, Sean." It's one of the good ones because that was the only Beatles song the guys at the piano bar knew how to play. Well, anyway, it's an interesting day. A lot of things have been going on. The Ukraine situation has profound geopolitical implications, and it's scared the international markets. It's very curious to me that cryptocurrencies run counter-cyclic to the. My belief is cryptocurrencies should run counter-cyclic to the stock market and all these other places, but instead they're running in pair. So as the Dow Jones goes down, as the Nasdaq goes down, as markets fall, and there's fear in the markets, Bitcoin also goes down. Bitcoin's down 15% this week. It tends to drag everything down with it, rising tides and falling tides. It makes no sense at all because if the world's going to war and we're worried about inflation and chaos and tragedy, you would think that the opposite would be true, that as instability occurs here, that crypto assets are a safe haven. They're a put on world security and trust in institutions, so they should go up. So I think it's a combination of overheated markets last year combined with some institutional pairing and some retail fear together. Unfortunately, what this means is that everything just goes to hell really quickly. Easy up, easy down. People love the ups, but they forget the downs. And predictably, there's been a tsunami wave of criticism coming to Twitter and other channels saying, do something! Save us! Save us! Like, first, guys, it's a decentralized ecosystem. If it's truly decentralized, no one has the power to save you. The ecosystem is going to save itself. Honey Badger doesn't care. And more importantly, nothing can be done at any event. If today a cryptocurrency announced a partnership with Microsoft or Google and said it's going to be the Windows standard or the Android standard cryptocurrency, you'd see a short-term spike, and within a week, the gains would be gone. They'd evaporate. Macroeconomics and geopolitical fear eat markets for breakfast. That's just the reality. Look at COVID. When it came out in 2020, everything went to hell. It was blood in the streets. And tomorrow is probably going to be a real tough day for the markets. And that's just where it's at. So that's why you have to zoom out and say, why are we here? What are we doing? And realize that if there's real use and utility and a real purpose in 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, things are going to look better and significantly better than they were 5 years ago. That's always been true for Bitcoin. That's increasingly been true for Ethereum. And it appears to be true for Cardano because these are real projects with real purpose and real community. And the stable people, the smart people, you know who you are. Nothing more needs to be said. It's just sad because you feel like you're making progress, you're finally getting adoption, and then you see these kinds of things. However, what's going on in Ukraine and elsewhere in the world where there's instability, like Sudan and so forth, is just a testimony to the need for cryptocurrencies and why we're here. At any given moment, cyber attacks or authoritarianism can shut off your money, can seize your assets, can shut off your right to vote, can destroy your identity, rewrite your identity, these types of things. It's true that these powers will always be abused by the powerful. So you have to say, well, isn't it about time we take back our lives? Isn't it about time we take back our sovereignty, become self-sovereign individuals? Isn't it about time that we be our own bank and be our own institution so that we don't have to live in fear that all the things we've achieved and gained can be taken from us so quickly? And that's the lesson to learn here. And I think the world as a whole will become increasingly more aware of that lesson. And it's going to eventually work its way through. And if we're right, what that translates to is global adoption of cryptocurrencies above and beyond a few tens of millions of people, but billions of people and entire circular economies that live within that bubble. And a lot of good things to come. You know, we got a great update coming soon for Cardano, and then come June, there's going to be the Vossel hard fork, and then the next hard fork will occur October. And with that, you have SIP 31, 32, 33, you have pipelining, you have input endorsers, you have a lot of great technology. And the brass tacks is it's commercial technology. There's no more theory here. You know, security is achieved. The network's at scale. We've demonstrated it survives under enormous load. It doesn't shut down. What that effectively means is now it's time to turn on the commercial stuff, meaning 10x's of performance here and there, and all the kinds of things and expressiveness that are required for the next wave of dApps. There are over 500 projects now building on Cardano. That's incredible because the last time I checked 2 weeks ago, there were 300. And I got the numbers today and I said 500. Wow, that's crazy. So Cardano's open for business. We're going to be at Consensus down in Austin, Texas. We'll negotiate that out. And we're going to bring a lot of people with us. Not us, just IO and CF, but the ventures that are building. So we'll work something out. We'll announce something. If you want to come with us and showcase what you're building, what you're doing, we'll have a hackathon down there. You know, we're really going to show everybody who we are, what we're doing. And then in October, I'd love to go back to Bermuda 8 years later for my TED Talk and talk about what we achieved in the last 8 years as an industry and Cardano in particular as a product and what it's done for the developing world, where we're at. There's a lot of misinformation. There's a lot of lies. You know, there's a lot of people floating around just telling you garbage, verbal diarrhea. And you always have to take a step back and ask, who are these people? Why did they say what they say? Sometimes it's fear. You know, sometimes it's because they have commercial interests, and sometimes they're just misinformed and they go run with it like a town crier babbling to everybody, ringing the bell. And other times there's strong financial incentives that pervade to create narratives. For example, there's a work of fiction coming out tomorrow. It's a book by an author who shall remain nameless, and it absolutely eviscerates many of the Ethereum founders, myself included. And it's just a really unfair book. It's a work of fiction at the end of the day, you know, and probably some truth in it, some inconvenient truths for some, and a whole lot of speculation and innuendo and insinuation. And that's just a example of perverse incentives. You see, you dial that up, such a book becomes a movie. And if you get lucky as the author, it becomes the next Social Network with your Justin Timberlake and all-star cast, Oscar awards, and more importantly, millions of dollars of profit for the author. That's the economy we live in. I think the Kardashians have been on for more than 15 seasons. We love to watch the lives of the rich and famous. We love to watch the lives of the powerful and infamous, and we love to have heroes and villains. We love stories. It's who we are as people. There's nothing materially different in psyche from the tribes sitting around the fire 10,000 years ago and us today. You take someone born then, you raise them today, they'd look and sound exactly like you and me. You take someone born today, you raise them there, they'd look and sound a lot like a Paleolithic person. Just that simple. And the one unified thread is storytelling. That's what got the human race through its at. So you have people with their exits and their entrances and their villains and the heroes, and there's marketplaces for these things. But the story that we should all remember is the story that we have dominion over our own lives, and we are capable of achieving liberty and freedom. That's what I care about, and that's what I've become increasingly more concerned about. Many of you notice I've become a little bit more political during the age of COVID. It's because we are creating, through mandates, second-class citizens. We've taken a group of people and we said, if you don't do something, then you can't go to a restaurant, you can't go to a bar, you can't go to a coffee shop. And we never really set a condition of what we're really worried about. And I'm just not really comfortable with the idea that society gets to create second-class citizens. That's why people protest. And then when they do, they get silenced and speech gets destroyed, and informed consent, which is the bedrock of medical ethics, gets challenged. And that's just one thing. There are many things going on. There are many lies going on, and people have an all-time low opinion of and trust of institutions, whatever those institutions may be. And when their political party wins, they don't seem to have much problem with it. When their political party loses, the institutions are intrinsically dangerous and corrupt. And the reality is that there's collusion on both sides behind the veil to rob you of your money. That's what's going on. We've witnessed the largest wealth transfer in history the last 2 years between the poor to the rich. And that's not going to stop unless the systems change and the institutions change. It's just that simple. The whole point of what we do as an industry is to change things. You think maybe it's a good idea for us not to have Putins and Xis. They would have never been able to come to power if there were governments of integrity and principles. Problem resolves itself. You think it's a problem that we have certain people in the White House, pick your favorite political side. Those people would have never come to power. We did politics differently. You'd have different leaders and different incentives. But we have what we have. And now wars are breaking out. Markets are uncertain. Inflation is very pervasive. And a lot of people are very scared. So you have a choice to make when you're scared. As terrifying as it can be. You can take a step back and survey the entire situation, orient yourself, observe, and try to come up with some way of moving forward, however terrifying that is, and believe that whatever course of action you're taking is going to get you to higher grounds in a better world, or you can just give up. There was an experiment that was done at Harvard many decades ago when they didn't care as much about medical ethics, where they took some rats and they dunked them in water and they let them sit in these vats of water, and they timed how long the rats would swim before they gave up and just decided letting themselves drown. And so they left them in the vats for 15 minutes on average, and the rats would give up. Right before they drown, they'd rescue them, dry them off, let them recover a little bit, and then dunked them in the water again, see how much longer they'd last on the second try. Most people, if you ask them, guess how long you think the rats would last the second time they've been dunked in the water, would say, I don't know, probably less time, 10 minutes, 5 minutes, they're tired, kind of get a little hopeless. It was the opposite. 60 hours, 15 minutes to 60 hours. Why? Because the rats had hope of being saved. The lesson is hope is a powerful thing. Belief is a powerful thing. So powerful that it has the power to sculpt nations. It wasn't too long ago that a bunch of people got a crazy idea in their head that because they were really pissed off about political grievances, lack of representation, encroachment of their rights and liberties, they decided to declare a revolutionary war against the most powerful nation on the planet and fought a brutal conflict without proper rations or clothing or ammunition. and through sheer force of will, tamed an empire. And from that was born a nation, an imperfect one with many problems that still is imperfect, but that's where we came from as a people. We were born of hope and a belief that we could get something better. So in many ways, that's the point of this industry. Take it or leave it. You can hate anybody you want. Plenty of founding fathers in America. You think they all got along? John Adams and Thomas Jefferson probably stab each other with knives at some point in their lives. I mean, for heaven's sakes, Aaron Burr shot Alexander Hamilton. Not exactly the best of friends, although Jefferson and Adams did become at the end of their life, which is so extraordinary. But despite the fact that they didn't get along all the time, especially didn't get along, they found a way to set it aside and figure out a way forward. We as an industry have to do better. And some people want to focus and monetize on the past or the present, and some people just want to grab as much as they can for their own interest and leave the rest of us to drown. But I'd like to believe most people, when they see a problem, are willing to solve that problem. Cardano is a reflection of your efforts, my efforts, and the efforts of millions now. 500 dApps building, 3 million assets issued, an ecosystem and economy to a better world. We did our part. We did all the research. We figured out how to get protocols that actually work. And believe it or not, I had a few things to do with it, but some people say no. And now it's a part of the community with us to take it to the next level. I do less AMAs today than I have historically because they're less relevant. It's no longer the guy sitting on the mountaintop preaching the sermon. I'm just your friend. I'm here. We grew up together. We know each other. And it's fun to talk to you, especially when there's sometimes fear and panic or things don't work out the way that we think it's going to work out, because we're all in this together. We're on the same boat. Whether it's a bad market day, a good market day, I'm here. And nothing gives me more pleasure and happiness than to talk to you guys and spend time with you guys and gals. You're really just exceptional people, and you've changed my life. You've changed my perspective. You give me hope. I often ask, why do you keep swimming? You don't need to anymore. I swim because of you. And I think I'll last a lot longer than 60 hours, I'll tell you that. Year by year, I get tired and worn down, the constant criticism, the politics of personal destruction, all the hate, negativity, toxicity, all the things that people say and do, all the threats. I have security now. Never used to have that. Now I do. I have no privacy anymore. Everywhere I go, I'm tailed and followed. I endure all of that because at the end of the day, we together have a seat at the revolution. We get to change the world together. Some people get to be officers, and some people get to be soldiers, and some people get to be legislatures, and some people are just well-wishers, here to add some support. And that's pretty special. I don't know of anything I can do in my life that's more meaningful than this. I don't want to be a spectator when nations get invaded and people's rights get trampled and the world goes to hell and the money in my pocket loses 20% of its value every year. I don't want to be a spectator in a castle somewhere living a gilded life, saying poor peasants. That's the greatest evil a man can ever embrace, indifference to the suffering of others. I got to be there in the arena. Sometimes right, sometimes wrong, but always in the arena, always fighting, always ready, always prepared, because that's just who I am. And there's a hell of a lot of people listening right now who are exactly the same. And when you put them together, you got an army. And as long as you have an army, well-trained, not well-trained, well-supplied, not well-supplied, as long as you have an army, you got a chance. And that's all you need to keep swimming. So we're going to win. All right. You listened to me rant for 20 minutes, and now it's your turn. Let's talk. Let's see your questions. It's a rough market for us new investors, Charles. It's a rough life, Roy. Think about it. You left your money in US dollars, just put it in cool wet sack, you lose 20%. Just like that. That's how bad inflation really is. They say 7.5. It's actually 20. That's bad. That's bad for all of us. It's getting difficult as time goes on. There are so many human rights violations, and the battle seems insurmountable. Yeah, it does, but you can always find a way to get it better and resist and build up. Don't lose the faith. With great technology comes great responsibility and the need for wisdom. And the leaders that we have right now, they're not so good. And they're aging out. So the next generation, it's up to us to figure this one out. Worthless talks from a guy who likes to speak like a guru and pretending he is trying to be just a simple guy. Sam, can you show me where on the doll they touched you? Are you okay? Do you need a hug, man? You just got hate in your heart, man. It's okay. It's okay, Sam. We love you. We're going to give you space to heal and get the support that you need. I saw you at a stoplight one day in Boulder. Well, damn Skippy, Horn Hunter. What was I driving? Please burn coins. All right. I just want to remind everybody, please create a burn contract. We're ready to go. What's your take on the potential war, Charles? So here's the thing about Putin. He's an old school KGB guy. And the pretense of that order are very simple. Where there is weakness, take advantage. So if your adversary is a drinker, give him a drink. If your adversary likes women, give him a woman. If your adversary has the same pattern and habit and approach to life, learn it and use it against them, whatever it might be. America used to be strong, powerful, dominating. Withdrawal from Afghanistan, 20 years of war, weariness. We're weakening a bit. Europe's resolve is weakening a bit. Politics are different now. So, the Soviet Union used to be this big. Now they're here. And so wherever weakness shows itself, take advantage. Land, geopolitical influence, power. See, invade, not invade, create a geopolitical buffer. It's a negotiation point, leverage. Ukraine doesn't join NATO. Move your missiles further back. Get rid of them altogether. Abandon a certain piece of technology. You can ask for anything. And just by creating the crisis, you go from zero to something. And however weak the government is, the adversary is, you take advantage of that. That's the way this guy thinks. It's some zero. And that's the way he thought for the last 20 years. It's not going to change. Yeah, that's how Putin is. It's who he is. So should we be surprised about what's going on? Should we be surprised that someone is taking advantage of the situation? The same when China and Russia get together and they make a deal to start trading things in euros instead of dollars. De-dollarization of the world. That's another geopolitical push to weaken a bit. And the more missteps that are taken geopolitically, the more power they're going to gain. I remember the presidential debates between Romney and Obama. And Romney very accurately said the Russians, they're asserting strength and dominance again. And they're going to be one of our biggest geopolitical adversaries in the next 10, 20 years. And he was mocked brutally for that. And now we're here because there was intent and desire. The first challenge of Putin was when he came to power, oligarchs, president. And he had to do this, president, oligarchs. And once that was cleared through, they had an economic downturn, can't take the blame for that. Somebody else comes in, and then he comes back. Now he's dictator for life. And okay, what does a dictator do? They started flexing muscles, asserting dominance, changing the subject, making sure they're always ahead of the narrative, and so forth. Okay, that's what they're pushing for. Weakness. There's an old saying, nature abhors a vacuum. And that's what Russia's doing. They see a vacuum and they're taking advantage of it. Now, there are many things wrong with the U.S. government, and the war machine has to be fed. So there's huge incentives, military-industrial complex, to find the next boogeyman in the next conflict. Afghanistan's over. The war on terrorism is not exactly as sexy as it used to be. So let's go drum things up with the Ruskies. $700 billion plus a year spent on this machine that employs millions of people. What are we going to do? Just shut it down? No president's crazy enough to do that. They might end up having Kennedy in their last name, and things happen when they go down that road. So, got to feed the beast. We Americans, we seem to love our wars. War on drugs, war on terrorism, war on poverty, war on this. And at the end of the day, you end up hiring millions of people to do it, and then you can't stop the war because those millions of people get fired. Think it through. Now we have the medical industrial complex. Every year, you have to take your medicine. $100 billion gets sent to private industry. No liability. They don't have to pay to develop anything. They get it for free, and you have to pay them through your tax dollars. It's a racket. Spit and truth. Can I please work on your mushroom farm? I'm experienced in agriculture and from Colorado. I am looking for a guy. So I tell you what, here's my EA. You send your resume to me. Right there. That's my EA. Send your resume to Jeffrey. Go ahead and save that. And send me your resume. I want to know all about you. I might even have lunch with you. Who knows? I am looking for a guy. I got a mushroom farm turning online here in March. Going to grow some lion's mane and a few other things. Charles, when can we have a network that's uncongested? Everything's very slow. Well, blocks are not at 100% capacity. You're running about 70. It's not ideal, but a lot of that's on the dApp side, not on the network itself. Blockchain is getting larger in terms of block size mem units, and that helps a little bit. Pipelining in June is going to be the big one. And then you'll feel very natural at that point. Then input endorsers is the 1-2 punch, and that's what gets us to that high TPS rate. This is as expected. Everything's going according to plan. Don't worry about it. How did you enjoy your time on Crypto, Jeb? I always enjoy my time when people have a great interview. They ask me good questions. We just have a good rapport. It's fun. Just talk to people, treat people with respect. Mm-hmm. I had to ask this question on AMA vid. How does Atala Prism bring value to Cardano? Are there chain metrics from the use of Atala Prism that can be identified in the Cardano blockchain? So it looks like metadata with hashes when you do batch drops of people. And generally speaking, when you're talking about mass registration of millions of people, that is done as a roll-up of people in some sort of data structure that's authenticated. And you can go as arbitrarily large as you want. You can only have a single hash for that if you trust the source to possess that data. But you're always able to verify if you construct the snippets off-chain correctly. Now, as an individual, so the self-sovereign identity component, every identity would relate to a transaction. So it's either many to one or one to one, or it could be even many to many, just depending on the way you use Atala Prism. And if you have the actual DID in the memory or just a hash representation of it as an integrity check of the DID. So in practice, the integrity check makes a lot of sense because when you have like 5 million people, like the Ethiopia deal, or 8 million people, like the Boost Dish deal, that's 13 million people, 13 million transactions. Why? It just bloat the network. No, and these are centralized services at the end of the day. You just want to know as an employer that the credential you're given with the proof checks out and hasn't been tampered with. The blockchain component is the trusted bulletin board to say it's not been tampered with. So you'll see some hashes in the chain, and they're just hashes, and those are usually fidelity checks for some file, an integrity check for some file. But because their centralized systems run off-chain, that's as far as you can take them. Over time, as peer-to-peer identity goes, then you're actually going to see registered DIDs, not just hashes, because you're using it as the key server, like the MIT key server for PGP or these things, the public-private key. You see that identifier and a hash of the DID document that's associated with it, which is, and then you can see the trust, the web of trust form around that. That's a different way of using Prism. And how does it value Cardano? Well, it values, I see, in three ways. One is user acquisition, because once they have a DID, they're usually in some form of wallet infrastructure, which is Cardano. Great. 13 million customers. Great. Let's get them into the family, get them using dApps at some point. It's a long road, but we'll get them there. And you can always scale because it's B2B2C play. Two, once you have identity in the system, then you're able to do compliance. And if you can do compliance, then suddenly you can do regulated activities. For example, taking technology like what Acuant has with AML KYC for AML KYC with a DID, then you could talk about one-click exchange creation. So you talk about frictionless use of cryptocurrencies for consumers. It would be really cool if I just boot up my wallet. Oh, I need to trade that. They click a button and they're using Coinbase. The account auto creates. No compliance check, no wait. It just boom, it's frictionless, and you have the same interface in the wallet or things like that. Or the third area is regulated dApps. So what if you have a DEX, but you say to use this DEX, there's an entry condition where you have to have a DID with a whitelisted KYC-ML. So it's still decentralized trading and order books and no custodial risk or counterparty risk or things like that, but it is regulated at the entry and exit points from saying that somebody has to be accountable for knowing who the users are. That's an example of regulated dApp. That's not something the space commonly does today, but as regulation comes, it's going to be something people begin exploring. And we get all three for free with Prism. Mass B2B2C, customer acquisition, you get that cream filling in the middle, and then you get obviously the regulated dApps. So a lot of automation of regulation, and a lot of things about building an identity system, super important in the overall usability of the system. The other thing is that identity is key for all credit relationships. You have to know the person. You don't necessarily have to know the name of the person or the physical real identity of the person, but you need some object that's Sybil resistant, that is able to have enough reputation weight behind it that the value of burning the reputation is less than the value of cheating you. You see, and so as long as you have a system like that, you can have anonymous lending, but safe lending and create credit metrics and scores. And that's what we're basically building. So identity is key. It's one of the bedrocks, one of the foundational pillars of a cryptocurrency working properly. By the way, all our critics never mention that. 13 million people. It's as if it doesn't exist. Put it in the book. Maybe people like reading it. Who knows? This is a good one. Charles, kindly update us on the status of Paper Wallet. We are working on a light wallet. That light wallet will have a Paper Wallet center in it, and I'm going to make sure that that center has QR codes that are encrypted. I really believe in that. I think it's an awesome idea because it protects you from printer attacks, and it's a good way of saving things. And you can potentially store them in email as a backup mechanism securely. So this is something I care a lot about. I want to do it. And I'd absolutely love to see it done with animated QR codes for the digital backup. That'd be fun. Charles, what are your thoughts on blockchain domains? I mean, if we could redo the internet all over again, we would use a trusted bulletin board as our domain space instead of ICANN. It's an example of replacing an institution that's centralized with something that's decentralized. From Fat Boy Gutta, do you like tacos? Yes, I do, sir. Tacos come in all different shapes and sizes, and I love all the colors of the rainbow. Charles, latest thoughts on Ergo. 5,000 outputs in one transaction. Way to go, Alex. Charles and Amber should hang out. Who the hell's Amber? Got to give me more. When will it be EVM compatible? Cardano really seems to be missing out on cross-chain dApps. Look at DC Spark and what they've created with Milkamita. And they're already running an EVM chain. And then next month, we should have a testnet out for it. And throughout the year, we're going to roll out the entire sidechain strategy and show you guys how to run your own sidechain. What were your thoughts about the Ethereum conference you attended, and did you converse with the formers? I did see Vitalik, gave him a fist bump. I kind of didn't have a chance to talk too much because he was busy. There was a long line of people, and it was probably the first time that they've ever had a chance to talk to him or see him. So I figured let them do that. Why ruin the fun? Saw a lot of people, talked to a lot of people. The castle is legendary in the Ethereum community, and Denver has been going on since the beginning. It's grown a lot. It used to be they argued about how to pay for pizza for so many people for a hackathon, and now it's a big event. Governor of Colorado comes, other people come, and I was treated with respect, and no one yelled at me, no one threw anything at me like the Bitcoin conference I went to last year, the toilet paper roll, and for the most part, people were very friendly and curious and friendly. And if people didn't like me, they certainly didn't make it known, or they just avoided me. But all things considered, it was just too dense. The other thing was that, you do a lot of work, cryptography and information security. You start developing a security mindset. And there's a lot of security theater there at that event. It's very easy to gain entry. If you have one person, you can swap the wristband and the badge and just kind of work your way through it, get in through the front door, and then play a game of musical telephones with that. The other thing is you had to take a COVID test to enter, but we had to do it ourselves as groups of 5, and it wasn't supervised. There's just too much chaos and pandemonium, which means you can just like spit on the test and it'll come up negative. You have to get a pharyngeal swab to even get a notion. So what value does that provide? None, absolutely none. But okay, let's take the COVID test, and that somehow makes everybody feel better about life. Also those kits that they were providing were standard kits that you could buy at Walgreens. So you just take one with you and show the guy, oh yeah, I took it. Here you go. I see a single line. We're good. So, stuff like that really bothered me. And I saw some people actually walk out of line and say, this is antithetical to everything I stand for. And I understand that, a blockchain conference being like, you must comply, you must do this. But, it's neither here nor there. It's a private event, so they have the right to decide what they want to do. But all things considered, I had fun. I didn't get invited to speak or anything like that. And really not much to talk about there. I guess I could have mentioned the EVM sidechain and lessons learned from doing a BFT-based EVM system, if that's interesting to anybody. But we're definitely going to have a bigger showing at Consensus in Davos this year, and we'll definitely talk to a lot of people through that. Didn't run into Joe Lubin, and I did not run into Gavin. I think they were there, but I did run into Vitalik. So didn't have a chance to talk to Joe and Gavin. A lot of hate, though, on the internet, and a lot of hate in Reddit and other places from people in the Ethereum community, and bizarre beliefs. Certain people in the Ethereum circle have converged to total clarity on who I am as a person, which is surprising because I don't even have total clarity on myself, but they have total clarity to the point where they feel very comfortable saying I'm a sociopath, a pathological liar, a hype man, no technical skills, rah, 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 rah. Any evidence to the contrary, they ignore. Any demonstration of humility or humanity or concern or care is explained away as an elaborate ruse to deceive people. To what end? We're still here. We still keep going. Don't have to be here. EOS guys ran away. Block One's being sued, I guess, by their own community. I'm still here. Been at this game longer than them, too. Cardano, Cardano, Cardano. Never leave, never go. Keep going. Like Helmos, we told everybody what we're going to do. We did it. And now we're telling them what we did because they don't believe us. I think that's just a reflection on where society as a whole is at. We like villains and we like heroes. We like convenient, easy narratives, and confirmation bias is a thing. And the Ethereum community in particular, a lot of people there have succumbed to the politics of personal destruction and narratives. Guys, we don't always ship on time. You don't either. You're a hell of a lot more late than anything we are in our roadmap. Furthermore, we wrote everything down in a very careful way, and every single critic who succumbs to the politics of personal destruction are incapable or unwilling to actually have an intellectual discussion about what we've done doesn't work. The book author who shall remain nameless did a podcast today, it came out today, and said, well, the launch of smart contracts on Cardano is a failure. We are not a real competitor to Ethereum. We've bamboozled and misled people. News to Sunday Swap, news to Meld, news to Occam, news to everybody who's building stuff, especially things running right now today. You can do swaps. Stuff is happening. It's an extended UTXO model. It's an entirely new programming model that's never been done before. But they just subscribe to this belief. And it's unchallenged. Nobody says, well, maybe there's some merit there. Maybe something good's been done there. No. It's Charles bad, Cardano bad. All of you listening who like us are a cult. And the only reason we've achieved what we've achieved is because of some elaborate manipulation that's so sophisticated that we wrote 130 papers, academic papers, and went through the peer review process, invented new protocols, and changed the science of the entire industry just to facilitate an elaborate con. So sophisticated that it will actually deliver a real product just to justify itself. It's almost like that South Park episode where the police, the chief of police of South Park is doing stings, and he dresses up as a prostitute to catch Johns, and he takes it too far. He starts sleeping with the Johns and arresting them after he sleeps with them, and then eventually he falls in love with one of them, and he's like marrying the person, and then right at the wedding he says, "Freeze! You're under arrest." This is the mental thought process that those people on that side of the aisle live in. For 6 years straight, we've been building a community, been doing the right thing, been pushing for it for 6 years. All this code, all these people, hiring people, dealing with people, everything from military contractors to firms in the Eastern Bloc to people in Africa, just going all these places. Just so that at the end of the day we can go freeze. It's like, what are you doing? This is so nuts. It's the craziest thing I've ever seen in my life. But it is what it is, and it's the same kind of conspiratorial thinking that has infected politics. If you don't like Trump or Biden, a lot of people are willing to believe pretty much anything to confirm what they say. Anything. Any depravity, they will go for it if they can find a way to justify it. It's where we're at. People are hurt. The source of all of it isn't me or anything I did 10 years ago for the 6 months I was at Ethereum. It's the trauma everybody is feeling right now. The world doesn't have as much love as it needs. We've just spent 2 years separated and being lied to, and we're hurt. Institutions are failing us. Not a lot of people are economically where they need to be. and all the things you're told to do to improve the situation. Go to college, start a business, all these things. Decks being stacked against you globally. And then you got the most powerful people in the world, like Klaus and the rest of the gang, saying you'll own nothing and be happy. And dystopian realities being inflicted on people, like social credit. People are scared. People have trauma. People are angry. Angry, traumatized, scared people, they lash out. They attack people. They look for villains. They get cynical. They're bitter. Anybody who's been abused knows this. Anybody who talks to someone who's been abused knows this. Collectively, as a race, billions of us have been abused by what's been going on. We're not happy as people anymore. It's why depression's at an all-time high. It's why PTSD is at an all-time high. It's why divorces and domestic violence and a litany of other things are at all-time highs, and suicides at an all-time high. Think about it. These are just facts. And this is just an example of it. And it's sad. Hating someone is like taking poison and hoping the other guy dies. Doesn't really accomplish much. And succumbing to the politics of destruction is the exact same thing at the end of the rainbow. You're only hurting yourself. And sometimes you pay that check much later on in life, but you always have to pay for it at some point, either in missed opportunities or personal unhappiness or some issue. So if we're ever going to get out of this as an industry and as a society, we have to really take a chill pill, and we just have to learn how to relax a bit and listen, and also look up to people. Think the best in people. Or we can just keep throwing hand grenades at each other. Charles, what happened with the wallet that was announced at the summit? We're building it, man. Got a huge fucking team on it. We've been building and building. It's coming out this year, sooner rather than later. I want it out. I'm excited. Charles, do you think we're in the Great Reset? Absolutely. There's a lot of people running around really trying to fuck us up. You always have to face the raven. That's true. What are your thoughts on Pernus? Well, Woods Z01, I just don't know what you're talking about. I don't know what a Pernus is. Can you elaborate a little bit more and just give me a little bit more about Pernus? You are rich. Well, yeah, I'm rich in a money that loses 20% of its value every year. Even with the official numbers at 7.5%, every 9 years, half my value disappears. With 20%, which is the real number, every about 3.5 years, my value disappears, goes down by a half. Within 10 years, I have 1/8 of the value. Wow. Doing a little bit better, but that just means I'm further back in the line. But we're all going to the same place. And you know what? They can take it from you. You don't think I'm on a list? Charles, can you address the new FUD that Hydra is only theoretical and not possible from some GitHub comment? No, they're completely fucking wrong in every possible way. Hydra is absolutely possible. It's got a public roadmap, version 0.3. We have great releases. I think they're every 3 weeks. Tons of things to do. Put roll-ups in the head and tail protocol. But it's public. It's out there. This is an example of FUD misinformation to reality. Hydra is in the life cycle of applied research. A paper was written, a philosophy was embedded, and now it's an engineering problem. And as engineering is being done, things are being discovered about Cardano that need to be updated, modernized, and changed to accommodate the reality on paper. So the team is in rapid iteration, and every few weeks they learn something, and the project evolves. And that project is co-building with 6 commercial partners. So we have a bunch of DApp guys, and we say we'd like to see you use Hydra in your DApp. Taboja is in charge of that program, 6 of them, working alongside the scientists, working alongside an engineering team, and the community as a whole. And we're making progress. SIP 36, we discovered we need to modify some things to make it easier to deploy Hydra on the system. That's the point. New Hydra papers are coming. Updates to the protocol are coming. Guys, Ouroboros Classic can't run a real cryptocurrency. Ouroboros, Praus, and Genesis can, as we see with Cardano today. We had to implement and iterate to get to Praus and Genesis, and we're doing the same with Hydra. But somebody in GitHub says, no, it's not possible. Oh, no, the GitHub commenter. Ah. Okay, great. The misinformation in this space. Cringe? Your cringe or my cringe? Charles, can we get another programming language to use other than Haskell to build on Cardano? Yes, Cardano is a multi-paradigm system, a multi-computation model. EVM support is coming. Did Colorado's governor get back to you? Jared Polis is his name. I've known him since before he was governor. He ran the Jared Polis Foundation, and then he was the congressman for my county, Boulder County, and then he became the governor of Colorado. Not hard to talk to the governor. I know Governor Gordon up in Wyoming so much better than I do Governor Polis, but it's not a big deal. And, you know, honestly, I think Wyoming is a better state, more prime for a crypto company than Colorado. But, you know, Big Ten, and I'm sure we'll run into Polis a lot. We talked to several people state Colorado, I think the Attorney General and a few others, and you know, I've been here for 20 years. I know Colorado really well. Charles, what's up with Mike Alfred and his hate towards Cardano on Twitter? Oh, he has Cardano derangement syndrome. But, you know, the thing about Mike is that it's one thing to say, I think the price is going to collapse and ADA is useless and has no utility and all these guys are incompetent. And this is puffery and qualitative statements. Allowed to do that, no problem at all. It's not libel. It's just like the Big Lebowski would say, that's just your opinion, man. To the cows come home. And if you agree with him, great. You can just go like, oh, Mike, oh, yes. You can just do that all day long, okay? And just get a nice hot towel and wipe your face off afterwards and have fun. But the minute you cross the threshold and you start lying and asserting that we're manipulating markets or other things like that, and you repeatedly tell the lie as if it's a fact and mislead people, you've now crossed into libel. Okay? I'm allowed to say you're a terrible human being. I'm not allowed to say that I saw you do a hit and run and, you know, kill this child, or like I saw you like beat your wife or something like that. Okay, and write that in a medium where thousands or millions of people are going to see that with an intent to defame for economic purposes. Can't do that. So I said, Mike, stop it. And he apologized. All right, I'll take you at face value. Backed off. So he went and retracted the libel. And now we're back in the Cardano sucks and Charles is an idiot and everything about this ecosystem is wrong. And that's what Peter Schiff does every day with Bitcoin. Okay, I don't have a problem with that. And if he wants to do it any day. But the minute he crosses that boundary into libel with the intent to defame for economic purposes or try to provoke some form of regulatory issue or something like that, that's too far, especially when it involves my company. The other thing is when it's a protocol that's open like Cardano or Charles Hoskinson, there's no ego or something. Fuck it. Who cares? But when it's my company, input-output, that's 600 people that Mama Bear's got to protect. And that's what we're going to do. Because they like going to work. They like their job. They're good people. And you can't go and defame and hurt them. They didn't sign up for that. from Aunt Lynn. Charles, how do you feel about the SEC's flip-flop on their position on the Hinman opinion speech? So, what they say in public, what they say in court. It's two different things. I remember Giuliani doing this. We have evidence that Trump's election was fraudulent. Biden cheated. It was the great con. Or all right, and then you go to the judge, and the judge says, "Well, do you have any evidence of fraud?" No. I want to get disbarred. Come on now. They got a case to win. So they're moving a little bit. But the unintended or intended consequence is that they've gone from clarity to anti-clarity. It's not fair as a regulator to tell an industry one thing, but then to reverse course and say, well, we didn't really mean it. It's just not fair. If it's a personal opinion, you issue a statement after the fact, if you can't get them to retract it there, to say this was just a personal opinion and does not reflect the opinion of the agency. But you can't just let it ride, let opinions be written on it, and have the industry push forward, and then change your mind because it's convenient for a particular enforcement case that you're doing. But we've noticed this with this particular government, at all levels of this particular government, in different branches of this government, where they say one thing, they do another thing, and whatever is politically convenient, they do. It's not good leadership. It's not how prior administrations ran things on both sides of the aisle. And it's just hurtful to everybody. And it's not a partisan thing. It's just a clarity thing. When you're in an industry, you'd like to know what the rules are. But if the rules are ever changing and undiscernible, or are staged in a way where it's impossible to comply, so you're regulated out of existence, it's pretty crazy. It's almost Kafka-esque. You must have a license to do business, but you can't get a license to do the business. But then when you ask about it, you're told get a license to do the business. It makes no sense. And it's just not how you compete. And it's how you damage a $2 trillion industry. I recently had a meeting with some people in the Commerce Committee of the U.S. Senate, and I said the same thing to them. I said, look, maybe the regulatory agency, all they have is a hammer and everything's a nail. Well, give them a different tool. It's a screw. Give them a screwdriver. Give them a different tool. So pass a law. So I think there's a lot of blame on both sides. This is not just an issue with the SEC or the CFTC or some regulatory body. It's also a clarity issue as a result of no legislative activity. When the internet came out, got big in the 90s, they passed the Digital Millennium Copyright Act, the Communications Decency Act, introduced things like Section 230, and that provided some clarity on online ventures. Also, the NSF-AUP was repealed to allow commerce online. Okay, so that was what was necessary for the internet companies to start building. We're now in the same position. A $2 trillion industry deserves clarity. And that clarity comes from legislation and accommodation. It doesn't come from regulators like playing three-dimensional chess with laws that were passed in the 1930s when the vast majority of Americans didn't have even indoor plumbing or electricity. Ugh. Do you believe crypto winter is better for good projects like Vitalik said? Yeah, absolutely is, because you don't have the damn moon boys. Crypto summer and spring, you have massive salaries, unrealistic expectations, crazy valuations, and noise. The people at the conferences are moon boys chasing money. Crypto winter, it's like, well, it's all over. The only people left are the believers, who are there for philosophy, who are there to build stuff, who care about the use and utility of the systems. And the moon boys aren't around. You have a community, real people who are motivated by things bigger than money. So yeah, I enjoyed the hell out of $250 Bitcoin. Hated $20,000 Bitcoin. Hated $64,000 Bitcoin. It causes so much toxicity in the space and just negativity. And it makes it harder to hire good people. And unfortunately, some good people get swept up into scams. And then they get so much bad taste in their mouth, they leave. And you lose access to them. It's like a library burning down. Can we apply the Minotaur paper to Cardano, or is it just research? That's definitely something in potential for the Cardano 2025-2027 roadmap. And after we get what we need done, that's the community we're going to have, because it allows you to have multi-resource consensus. You know, like plutocratic systems or vertical integrated work systems, you can put things together in a certain pairing to have multiple constituencies and checks and balances. Therefore, Minotaur is not only the future from a security perspective, it's the future from a meritocratic perspective. More diversity. Charles, big fan. What do you think happens to Cardano if for some unfortunate circumstances you're not here anymore? If I die, it's kind of like Fallout New Vegas. When Caesar dies, the Legion still marches on. It's good to have a guy who started it, but it's its own creature now, and it's going in its own direction. Charles Hoskinson is not required, absolutely not required for Cardano to get to where it needs to go. From Pika Power, Charles Hoskinson, I'm new to ADA and really glad I'm on the right side. Thank you for what you're doing in crypto. Well, thank you, Pika Power, for the support and love. Pick up a shovel. Let's get some stuff done. Cardano.org. Election was a fraud. Well, you got to prove it. And if you have 80 lawsuits and you can't prove it in a court of law, then it's a pretty damn good fraud. And if you still believe it's a fraud, then what you should be saying is, how do we build a new election system so it can't be hacked? So, Mo Ya, what are you doing about it? What shovel are you picking up? You can't just say the bedrock of how we make decisions and give consent to people is wrong and broken, and sit in your little chair and shitpost online. You believe that the election was a fraud, the courts are no longer available to you, so legislatively we have to change laws then. So, go to your representatives and get it done and demand it, and that's your protest. This is my great umbrage with Donald Trump in his last days in office. The guy could have been a damn folk hero. If he had said, I think this election is wrong, I'm just going to spend the next 4 years of my life and the rest of my money changing the election system of America, so what happened to me never happens again. There would have been none of this stuff. And we'd have made real progress on long-term election reform, allow you to vote on your phone, allow us to be able to verify the elections. It's just so unbelievable to me, the 1984ism, doublespeak in our election system. They say you can't check your vote because if you can check your vote, you can sell your vote. So we have to keep the ballot anonymous and secret. Great, okay. But then they allow you to have a mail-in ballot. So let me tell you, somebody sends you a mail-in ballot and they want to buy your vote, you let them fill out the fucking ballot and you sign it and they give you a $100 bill. If you're going to allow mail-in voting, then you've already passed the pale of sell your own vote. You're concerned about that. So let them verify it, that when their vote is counted, they have some means to check that the vote was counted and it was recorded the way that they thought. And if you have inclusive accountability for the totality of the election system, it means that every user can check the amount of people registered to the amount of people who voted and see if the registrants exceed the population of the counties and the amount of people voted exceed or are less than the people who are registered. Should always be less than or equal to. It can't be higher. Okay, you should have that ability. Blockchains would give you that ability. So if you believe the election's a fraud, pick up a fucking shovel and ask for a blockchain-based voting system with a paper backup and demand it and fight for it every day. Push for it. Oh, they'll never let us do that. Well, if you believe that, then we're headed for a civil war. Because once we discover that the election system is corrupt and corroded, the legitimacy breaks down to a point where you can no longer, through a ballot box, get effective political change. And the only way to get political change is through violence. A reaction and counter-reaction will begin going back and forth and kick in, and eventually you have another civil war. So you might as well go start buying guns if you believe that. I, for one, would like to live in a peaceful America, a happy America, America that is not going to devolve and descend into things that happened in the 1860s. I would rather believe we've gained some wisdom as a society, and how you move forward is you be proactive and solutions-oriented. Stop complaining. Stop being a toxic troll online. Stop being angry. Stop listening to the noise and make a decision. Do you want to solve it if you believe it's a problem or not? Now, if you're on the other side of the aisle and you believe everything is great and there's no fraud and nothing happened, it was a legitimate election, that we elected a corpse that can't speak and somehow, some way got more votes than anybody in American history. When on your side of the aisle in 2016, you said Russia took the election and it was interfered with Russians. Okay, great. Shouldn't you want better voting, more inclusive voting? Shouldn't you want that I can use a cell phone and vote? Isn't that a good thing? Talk about people being disenfranchised, the racism of voter ID, shutting down polling, these types of things. Wouldn't it be a good idea to allow a voting week instead of a voting day so people have more opportunity? You don't have to take time off from work. You just click a button and you can vote and express your political will. Isn't that something you want from that side of the aisle? Don't you think that'll make America better and more inclusive? Then why don't you want blockchain voting? Seems both sides agree. One says we need to improve the integrity of our system so we know that we have a true democracy that leads to a representative republic. And the other side says that we have systemic racism in our voting systems that are used to preserve the power of evil racist people. Okay, great. So how do you resolve that? By changing the underlying DNA of the system so every single American has a voice and every single American knows that their voice hasn't been manipulated or changed. Bah. Now, if you believe this, left or right, it's a fraud. It's not a fraud because both sides said it was a fraud. One said it was 2016. The other said it was 2020. Okay. If you believe this, pick up a shovel and you have your solution right there. And if you're unwilling to do that, then what are you accomplishing as a person? What are you accomplishing? You're no better than the people who write books about people much greater than them 10 years ago of things that those people allegedly did. You're no better than those people. You're just diarrhea coming out of the mouth. You're just negative and toxic. You're hurting people for no reason. You're making people angry for no reason. It's like somebody walks into a party and says, let's talk about all the problems of the world. Start with the Rwanda genocide. And then we're going to talk about this issue and then this issue. And my dog died 2 years ago. I cried as a boy. What are you accomplishing? Nothing. Nothing at all. And if you believe it's so hopeless that you're being controlled and dominated, then just go live in a forest. From Husky Token, since you mentioned you don't know about Pernus. Eggplant emoji. Still don't know what that's about. What are your thoughts about Wernus? I don't know. Don't know anything about that either. From Daniel Kamish, thoughts on Ben Gortzel's hypercycle and the singularity. Toda hypercycle, these things. Ben and I did have a chance to talk about it. We're looking at it. It would be a really interesting sidechain for Cardano. So it'd be a lot of fun to see that direction. And we're going to get much more involved conversations here in a little bit. It'd be fun to bring them into the DCF. As for the singularity, I mean, it's like AGI is a more complicated thing. I'm not going to get into that one. Charles, do you conceal carry? Well, what's the point of conceal carry if you reveal the concealment? By definition, it has to stay hidden. It's not really concealing. What's your favorite math theorem? Probably Hilbert's Nullstellensatz. I love Cardano, but Algorand, better technology. Okay. Well, I'll bite, QD. What specifically about Algorand? What specifically? leads you to believe it has better technology, and for what use case? The floor is yours. In the comments, let me know. I'll bring it back up if you say something. How is there no proof if dead people voted? Well, dead people have voted in every election in my lifetime, and dead people have voted in every election in my dad's lifetime. Dead people have voted in every election my grandfather and his father and his father and his father's father's father. Dead people have run for office. Look it up. It's a true story. And actually won. Do you communicate much with Lex Friedman after the podcast? I send him emails from time to time. He actually also joins the AMAs from time to time. It'd be fun to do a rollback. And I'm going to be back in Austin for Consensus. So it'd be fun to talk to him again. Charles, do you have many like-minded close friends? It doesn't seem like you have many like you around. I have a huge diversity of people. Half the people I talk to think I'm cray-cray. Peanut butter and a cray-cray with a baseball bat. That's okay. If you have a superpower, what would it be? Oh, I think telepathy. All the shit that Charles Xavier can do. That's the way to go. From Joe, if you ever need roofing services, Horn Brothers Roofing, local out in Denver, Colorado. Well, Joe, here's some free advertising for Horn Brothers Roofing out in local Colorado. Charles, from Dr. Michael Lesser, quadruple board certified physician, one of the smartest doctors in the United States. Charles, your thoughts on using rapamycin in your new health clinic as a regular treatment to fight against anti-aging? Well, Michael, actually, it's a very interesting question. So there's a scientist out of Harvard named David Sinclair. He's wrote a lovely book called Lifespan, and there's a litany of other researchers that are looking into these things. And there's a lot of great anti-aging literature. And there are drugs like, as you're aware, metformin and rapamycin and others where they've been having discussions about using these in some way to extend life. And what they've discovered is that there's very strong evidence, especially with metformin, and there's some placebo-controlled double-blind studies that are coming out to reveal just how efficacious this is, that these drugs may indeed actually slow down the aging process, like caloric-restricted diets and other stressors have been shown to do. And they translate to years of extension of life, not just weeks and months. Now, it's important to understand and manage expectations that you achieve, as you're aware, for the audience's benefit, extension of life as a series of escalations with the big brush strokes and then the fine details. So it's kind of like when Bob Ross paints something. He'll do the mountains or the big landscape, the large objects. Then he moves to the other brushes and he starts making the trees. So when you look at rapamycin and metformin, NAD, high bioavailable resveratrol, other things, these are the brush strokes, the tiny brush strokes. The big brush strokes are free and simple, but hard. That's diet and exercise. You can always work out, and you don't even have to pay any money to do it. You don't even have to buy anything. There's plenty of ways to work out for free or very cheap. And diet, you can always converge to a maintainable diet that is interesting. Okay, so if you don't do those things, work out and have a good diet, no amount of rapamycin or metformin or any of these other things is going to give you a beautiful picture. You're painting little trees, but you got no mountains, you got no water, you got none of that stuff. You need to get your mountains, your water, and your primary part of your palette done first. And then once you get that, then you can move on to the next stuff. So if you just do the diet and exercise, maybe you go from living to 75 and the last 10 years aren't so good to living to 85 and in the last year shit, but the rest of them are pretty good. Then you add the metformin and the rapamycin, the NAD, these things, some intermittent fasting and other ideas, and you go from 85 to maybe you get to 90. That's good. Years are good. I'm a billionaire. I can't go to Walmart and go buy 5 years off the rack. There's no place I can go where I can just inject myself with something and magically I get a few more years. So that's magic. That's a very good thing. Then the next step is saying, okay, are there more accoutrements? Are there more things we can add? One thing we're looking at very intensively is hyperbaric therapies. That's as close to magic as you can get. They heal wounds really fast. They treat bends. There's actually a whole fellowship in hyperbaric medicine you can do. Actually, the entry point for that is taught in Florida and Miami. My dad and brother just went to a program down there, and they're going to do a year fellowship for it. But actually, more importantly, for this conversation, hyperbaric chambers, there's some good clinical evidence that's been generated out of Israel, and it's being commercialized, that's showing that they can actually slow down aging in situ. In addition to that, they have tremendously beneficial effects on nerves. TBI treatment, neurogenesis, they can trigger the production of BDNF, and a litany of other things. And there's just so many case studies. And every neurologist will tell you who's used hyperbaric medicine anecdotally and observationally, and now the science is finally starting to catch up and demonstrate it, say, hey, actually, I've been using this for 10 years, and it's really doing something good. It's really helping out my patients who have neurological problems. Well, if it's good for that, it's good for the goose, good for the gander. So we're looking at these types of treatments in parallel, in addition to a collection of drugs, prescription and otherwise, that could take you from that 85 beyond. Then there's new horizons of anti-aging research for my biotech company. And that's beyond 5 years. It's beyond 7 years. It's more like the 10-year range. And you're starting to ask questions about as fetal stem cells, you're asking questions about adult-derived stem cells, umbilical cord tissues, exosomes, these types of things. And you're looking at some form of a tissue transplant situation, either self-derived or external, and you're now playing with much more complicated primitives. Everything before is a modification of some process, metabolism, or some sort of process of the body's healing to regenerate it or get it to a state where it's operating optimally. But that's the tools God gave you. When you start talking about external things, it's very exciting because you potentially get another palette to play with, and that can make things great. You can put them together, whole new lifespan. But it's also quite dangerous because the same things that, as you're aware, could potentially be useful for regenerative medicine also start looking a lot like the cancers that kill us. And they start looking a lot like things that could create potentially autoimmune disorders and so forth. So the FDA in particular has been a little aggressive with people who've been involved in stem cell therapies, which is why a lot of treatments have offshored to Cancun, to Caribbean, and other places. And their adherents swear by them. And usually it's athletes or other people who have injuries like, oh, the disc in my back is bad, or my shoulder is bad, or something like that. But in general, we just don't have quite yet the peer-reviewed, placebo-controlled, double-blind studies in clinical trials necessary to indicate an efficacious signal that, yes, this indeed is doing something to turn back the clock. However, it is my belief, because synthetic biology is getting better, bioinformatics is getting better, diagnostics are getting better, genomic medicine is becoming extremely refined, that we will, within a 10-year time horizon, finally be able to start exploiting a lot of these stem cell therapies, especially with adult stem cells, which are just phenomenal because you can harvest them from the patient. You don't have to do anything with embryos and aborted fetuses or any of these other stuff from the long ago. You can just make it from your person, and it's like in like. Your chance of a side effect when it's your cell, probably pretty low. And that feels like long-term a better solution for a whole bunch of reasons, from scalability of treatments to a risk of complications and side effects. As all physicians aspire to do no harm, it's not good enough to have a potential to help. If you have a belief that there's a potential to harm, there's bad ethics in the rollout of that therapy. So we're looking into all of these things. First things first is just get primary care to catch up to where it should be. Genomic medicine, fully sequence the entire genome, understand the epigenome really well, and why it works the way it does. The microbiome and all of the other synergistic processes that enable health, super important to get those straight. Diet, exercise, and overall wellness, super important to get that straight as well. I'm not exactly a model of health, as you're aware. um, and I need to improve there. And those are the big brush strokes. And then you put a care team together, and that the Hoskinson Clinic that we're setting up in Gillette is going to represent most of the specialties. There'll be a cardiologist and a neurologist and a rheumatologist and a GI doctor and primary care representation, along with support staff like a full-time geneticist to do genomic medicine and so forth. Get that done right, come up with a wellness plan, then you layer on top of that an anti-aging protocol that's bespoke to that patient, and then you track and modify things, you study things, and you're very metric driven. We live in an age of diagnostic wonder. We have real-time continuous glucose monitors. You put them right here on the arm, and you can actually real-time track your blood sugar. And you just eat something, and you can see how it spikes. And you say, well, carrots do this crazy thing, and and beets don't, or vice versa. And because everybody's metabolism is a little bit different. And then you can get to the level of saying, well, maybe there's a genetic reason for this. And if you fully sequence the genome, you can play mix and match. The other thing is AI-assisted medicine and peer chart review. As you're aware, many physicians deal with a belief that peer review is adversarial. Usually another doctor looks at your charts when you've screwed up, or there's a perception you screwed up, and there's an investigation, a medical board is involved. What if you build your practice in such a way where that's just the standard operating procedure? Suddenly the other physicians are there to help you, and they're not there to take your license away or benefit a lawyer or something in a lawsuit or these issues. And AI review is very important because medicine is just simply too complicated now. You can't keep it all in your head. And so as a result, you need constant vigilance in every area, from the images that are taken to the drugs the patient's on, to try to keep up to date with the standard of care, and also assist the construction of differential diagnoses. The other thing we're doing is building a full image center. We'll have a 3 Tesla MRI, 256 slice CAT scan, DEXA scan, full body ultrasound. And there's a lot of amazing advancements in medical imaging that are just starting to percolate into the marketplace. And with AI assisted medical imaging, you can do some pretty remarkable things. And so that wellness plan, you can put all those things together. You're going to have the care team represented by a multi-specialty practice. You're going to have the genomic medicine. You have the image center, so you can do whole body MRI on the patient on a regular basis. You can take extensive labs because there's going to be a CLIA-approved lab there too. And there's a lot of really amazing labs, especially the onco labs in particular, a company called Grail and others that are developing tests that can do very early detection of cancer from a blood test that you just order as a physician. And most doctors aren't even aware that these tests exist because they're so new. And unless you're an oncologist and this is just your thing, you don't know about it. But early detection of these things is tremendously beneficial. Those are the broad brushstrokes for wellness, along with diet and exercise. Then next stage is the fine details. And then at some point you get the right to make another canvas once you've figured out how to do that in a responsible way that doesn't provide harm. So it's a side pursuit of mine. But my dad and brother work on it. They're both doctors, and we have other great people working on it, and we're real passionate about it. And I'll talk more about the biotech company over time. We're in kind of construction mode, building a big clinic and all these things, and it's tens of millions of dollars, but it's money very well spent. The other side of it is we'd like to have a humanitarian component, so it's not just medicine for the rich. The clinic that we're building is going to provide free health care for the poor. So we got to figure out the economics of that and how to balance them together. Because you have to give back. Theranos. Beware the person that tells you. Theranos is a great example of the magic box. You see this a lot. and entrepreneurship. I usually see it in the energy sector. Okay, so every now and then, Orbo or Storn was the company for that. You have all these things. We have this magic box, like a car that runs on water, or a cold fusion reactor, or this perpetual motion machine. And this magic box will solve all your problems. Now you say, okay, great. Can I see it? And it's almost like that Simpsons episode where Skinner invites Superintendent Chalmers over to his house, and he just has this series of lies, and eventually his kitchen catches fire. And Chalmers is like, "What's going on in your kitchen?" And Skinner's like, "Oh, Aurora Borealis." And Chalmers is like, "Aurora Borealis, this far south, completely localized within your kitchen." And Skinner's like, "Yes." And there's a whole series of memes on it, right? The magic box is like that. People say that. They say, "Can I see it?" No. So Theranos is a great example of that. They basically, we have this magic box and it does something. And all these doctors and scientists and other people say, well, can we see the magic box? Can we analyze it? And they say, no, it's our proprietary technology. We're special. Contrast that with how we approach things with Cardano. We have no secrets. We opened the box up. In fact, we started with the box in pieces and built it out in the open in the public. That's the point of the peer review process. Nothing was really peer reviewed in the Theranos side. Nothing there in the Theranos side was really transparent and open. Nobody really knew how the magic box worked. You just had all these guys on the outside like opining and speculating. How did she pull off this magic box? How does this thing work? Well, you contrast that with us. It's like everybody knows how our shit works to an extent where we've over-explained it in a language so technical that only scientists seem to care. And that's fine because we're the ones translating it into code, and now Cardano's here at scale. It's there, it's running. So now we have a clinic, okay? And they say, well, there's evidence-based, AI-assisted, personalized genomic medicine with a wellness team that's multidisciplinary, multi-specialty. People providing the healthcare are licensed physicians, and you're using science and evidence for the best treatment protocol. That's what the president gets. But with commercial innovation, you can provide that to the general public, or at least somewhat affluent members of the general public to start. That's Theranos. What extraordinary claims are being made there? What magic box is being offered there? You see, but you say it. You say it because you're an asshole, but you also say it because you really haven't thought very clearly about the root cause of deception. And this is a teachable moment. In every criticism, there's a teachable moment. In every comment, there's a teachable moment. Why do people fall for scams? It's too easy to say people are greedy and stupid and this and that and just blame the victim. It's too easy. There's always a root cause to it. In the case of Theranos, there was a desire for that magic box to work because the CEO was a female Steve Jobs. And everybody in the Valley wanted a female Steve Jobs. They wanted to point to somebody and say, we've gotten there as a society. So that meant, along with the confidence game that was played, the board of directors that she amassed, the charisma, the ability to do magician tricks, that bait and switch, the competitive dynamics that you either accept this or the other guy's going to take it, and there was another guy who was willing to take it. That was masterful sociopathy. Masterful. But it was only allowed to flourish because of a culture. Move fast and break things. Evidence doesn't matter. Some political agendas and a litany of other concerns that formed the perfect storm for a system like that to fail. If I was a VC and Elizabeth Holmes came to me and said, I have this magic black box. And I said, first thing I said, can I take it apart and play around? No. I said, well, I've signed an NDA. No, I don't want you. Okay. Well, then let's build an experiment. You give me that magic black box and teach me how to use it because it's a magic black box. And I'm going to go take 20 samples at random and I'm going to put them in that magic black box. And it should tell me what's going on here. Who's got herpes and who doesn't. Right? It's an experiment. Then at least I have some data points that you've created a really fucking convincing magic black box. Now that doesn't necessarily prove that the box actually does what it does. For example, there's a very famous case of the chess playing Mechanical Turk. And so this Benjamin Franklin played against it. It was this mechanical automaton. They said, I think, was from the Ottoman Empire, and apparently was a robot that knew how to beat people at chess. So all these famous people played it, and they were blown away. Wow, it's intelligent. It's a machine that can beat us. It turned out that there was a little midget inside that knew how to run it and played chess and was pretty good at chess. And it was an elaborate con. So you can have the guy in the box. There can be some bait and switch, but at least you have some temptation. You see, there's something real here. But if it can't tell you, it passes the first. And there's no legitimate reason why a real company would not want you to test their product. Anyone in the world can fork Cardano. The code's all open. Anyone in the world can take our paper and implement our papers, as has been done by Mina Protocol and Polkadot for some of our papers, for Ouroboros. Anyone in the world. There's no restrictions. If you're a scam, you don't let the people see what's behind the curtain because there's nothing there. It's just that simple. Projects in Cardano. How many currently? Thank you. Well, let me answer your question by giving all of you guys the way of verifying that yourselves. Talk about inclusive accountability. So there's a website called Cardano. Let's see here. Is it DApps? Cube. That's right. .io. Let me just make sure the website is live and I got the URL right. I did. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and click on the ecosystem map. And here is an interactive map for all of you guys on people doing stuff on Cardano. And by the way, this is not even the full list, but it's a good starting point. But it gives you guys a great view of the whole thing. CardanoCube.io, and you can kind of see a lot of different things. Click on their websites and so forth. There's the big ones, but there's over 500 or around 500 or so. Christos, this cognitive science legend, it appears. Any thoughts of its work? Okay, Cognero. I forget, where's Christos at, Richie? Anyway, cognitive function. Cognitive science is great. Cognitive neuroscience is magical. And, if I had to do it all over again, I'd probably do a PhD in computer science, do AI, and do a lot of cognitive neuroscience, and just get a master's in math and do automated theorem proving. I was never a very good mathematician. Didn't prove anything interesting. So cognitive neuroscience is phenomenal. There's a lot of great people there, and I've become incredibly interested in the brain recently. And I've been working in particular with something called the Neural Meditation Institute. Now, I don't have anything particularly to say about Christos's work because it's not my area of expertise, and I am not going to Dunning-Kruger my way through it. But I will say that the field in general is interesting, and I'm attending a conference in London on accelerated learning that's in May. And I will have a lot more to say on this topic as I become better informed about things like accelerated learning and things like memory and also meditation to improve focus and resolve attention issues and these types of things. I browsed the cryptocurrency subreddit, and the amount of hate you and Cardano get is unreal. Do you know why that is? We talked a lot about this in the beginning, and it stands for itself. I'd encourage you to listen to my comments there. The long and the short is that they're just convinced of things that aren't true. They're confirmation biasing their way through it. Charles, are you at the 10th booster yet for your Vax Slave Pass? No. 2 shots, got them last year. Knowing what I know now, and the fact that I got Omicron, there's no reason to get a booster. No medical science behind it. Is harmful to get a booster at this point relative to the value it provides. Medicine is not free. You do something, if it's effective, it has a chance to be problematic. Every single person in medical ethics knows that. And so the whole point of the FDA is to say, well, we've crossed a threshold where we can now have the conversation. And then the whole point of a doctor with a medical license is to say their judgment is going to help you along in making an informed decision of whether you're prepared to take the potential consequences for the potential benefit. I am immune to almost every variant of COVID right now. I got COVID twice. I was twice vaccinated. Got the Delta variant, got the Omicron. Recovered both times, 2 shots. There's just fuck ton of antibodies right now floating around. And every piece of medical evidence we have that says it's over for me. Now, there might be some variant in the future. And sure, I probably contracted at some point, just like they did Omicron. But it's probably not going to be problematic for me because the immune system works this way. Or else if it didn't, Spanish flu would never go away. Okay? So there's no sense in getting another booster. It makes no sense. 0 sense. And anybody who tells you otherwise, they're not thinking clearly. I got the booster. It was called Omicron. I took nature's vaccine. And I told people a long time ago, we're all going to get it. You're either going to get man's vaccine or nature's vaccine. Now, at the time I said it, from the data we had available and all the knowledge we had for the groups there, it made more sense with wild type and certainly Delta variant to get vaccinated. Now with Omicron, it's not as clear as it used to be, especially for people who are already vaccinated. So, this is the problem with the evolution of science and the politicization of science and scientism. People just say stuff and they believe things and they think medicine is simple. Medicine is not simple. It's hard because we have an incomplete understanding of the body and how the body works and the world around us works. This is why people go to medical school, go to residency. This is why people become medical scientists. It takes many, many years to know your head from your ass and many, many more years to be good at it. And good is relative. Good in that you can do better than nature, but you can't necessarily beat nature. And God, immunology is one of the hardest ones. Vaccinology is one of the hardest ones. Good vaccines take decades to fully understand. And this is a whole new ballpark. But we want a simple solution for a complicated answer. Unfortunately, the pushers of these treatments, they're using a hammer just like the regulators are with cryptocurrencies. And so everything is a nail. Everything's a vaccine. And it's much more nuanced than that. And they would be the first to tell you behind closed doors, but too afraid to tell you to your face publicly. Well, that's not necessarily true. It says makes 0 sense to get any dangerous vaccines. Well, what if there was an aerosolized Ebola? 50% mortality rate. And what if you find out that the vaccine only works half the time and there's a 10% chance that it causes you to develop a severe rash or heart problems or something like that? And this Ebola is spreading rampantly. Would you take the vaccine? You see, there's risk reward in all things. You look at the potential spectrum of problems from natural contraction of the disease. Normal coronaviruses, the common cold, these things, we don't vaccinate for that because it's not really a problem unless you're immunocompromised. And that's an opportunistic infection. It kills you for different reasons. But we sure as hell do vaccinate for yellow fever. And we sure as hell do vaccinate for very dangerous diseases, especially diseases that are terrible for children like measles, mumps, and rubella. And those programs, I went to a plantation today, and it was a plantation down in New Orleans, and it was sugar plantation, and I got to learn the entire history of the plantation. One of the people that lived at the plantation had 14 kids. Only 4 of them lived to adulthood. 10 died from child-borne diseases. MMR vaccination is a big deal. It prevents this type of stuff. So there's always a trade-off, risk and reward. Medical ethics is about the concept of informed consent. What can we tell you? What do we know? Do you understand and have the capacity to understand what's going on? And it's difficult sometimes. What if the patient has dementia? What if the patient's unconscious? What if the patient is mentally challenged? Then how do you inform them? And they have a custodian, but who is the proper custodian? Who's the proper guardian of the patient? Is it the parent? What if the dad disagrees and the mom does? We see this a lot. One parent wants to vaccinate the child, the other parent does not. There's been more than one divorce over this in the United States right now. Well, do both have the right information? It's a problem. So it does make sense, even if there's danger. It's just a question of, do we have an accurate view? Do we understand? And we have to look at the societal threat. In the case of childhood vaccinations, it was not an academic reality. Every single person who grew up in the 19th century and the first half of the 20th century knew someone, without exception, who lost a child early because of an infectious disease. It was a fact of human experience. And it's why everybody had lots of kids, because your kids were your retirement, and not all of them are going to be with you by the time you hit 30. It's just how it is. Vaccinations change that. That's a fact. So then the question is, okay, what is safe and effective? What is reasonable? And it's always proportional to the threat. When COVID first came out, why did everybody get so concerned? Probably came out of a lab. And governments freaked the fuck out because it's the first time they'd ever been exposed to something like that. And it causes all kinds of bizarre side effects, neurological problems and myocarditis. And you look at lungs where long COVID, it's like bombs have gone off. It's scary. And so they said, God, we need to do something. And they overstepped. And by overstepping, they destroyed the global economy and harmed a lot of people and pushed a lot of people into desperate ends. Now they're trying to walk it back. And the MacGuffin of walking it back is vaccination, even if it's not appropriate. And they have remove the power from the physician to make that decision with the patient. They're forcing it upon society. I don't understand what's the point of a medical license anymore if a doctor no longer has the ability to make medical decisions with the patient and have that discussion with them. Okay, we didn't elect a doctor-in-chief in the United States, but I guess we have one now. So that's a problem, and it destroys the faith and credibility in institutions. And it's seldom going to come back easily. And by the way, I talk about this a lot because it has an enormous impact on my ability to do business. I'd like to have a summit with the Cardano Foundation to discuss Cardano, the open source project. We're moving rapidly towards that. It's so hard. We've had to reschedule it 3 times because of COVID. Not because COVID's a concern, but because the government response to COVID has locked borders and made it difficult to travel, and onerous restrictions have been put on. And now we're finally converging to a point where we can do that. But this policy has made it very difficult to have certainty in plans in the world. And it's gotten just so bad. And just when you think it's over, it comes back. There's another proof of blockchain technology. The government's advertising for me. Watch out, you might lose your good boy credits for wrong speak. I assure you I am rapidly losing them. And I'm just going to keep. You need to do more research about World Economic Forum. Obviously, you don't see how this is a plan. Have you actually been to Davos? I get invited. I go there every year. I see the people. I shake their hands. I'm kind of part of that class. It's not what you think it is. There's no cabal of the New World Order, just meeting at Davos. Guys, if a secret society is meeting to determine the entire fate of the world, they're not doing so with $100,000 tickets. Davos is an excuse for very powerful people to get together to enjoy skiing and drinking and just hanging out with each other, to entice wannabes to go and try to suckle at the teats of power. The Swiss specialize in this. And it used to be like the Bilderberg Group. It used to be like the Jackson Hole Summits or other places. And it has converged to a point of a commercialized endeavor. You go there. It is pandemonium. Every hotel has high security. It's $10,000 a night for a hotel room in some cases. It's damn impossible to get around. You get searched everywhere. You go to your little thing, and there's just some guy, and he's looking at you, and he's like, okay, am I more powerful or is he more powerful? All right, let's see what alcohol he's drinking. Let's see his affiliation. I see his little tag on his badge. It's the double take is so common. They'll walk past you, look at your badge. As they pass you, they go on the cell phone, click, 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 click. Oh, that guy's important. Turns around, goes back, and says, hi, nice to meet you, so-and-so. I'm so-and-so. That's Davos in a nutshell. Imagine all of that in a small town that's not built for it, and it's impossible to eat. It's impossible to network. Believe me, man, if the rich, powerful people of the world are getting together in a single place to make a decision about your fate in life, they're not going to do it in a place where it is impossible to get a reservation for a fucking restaurant, and it takes 3 hours to get a slice of pizza. They're going to meet on a secret private island. They're going to meet in a beautiful castle in the mountains somewhere. There's a better New World Order event for crypto. It's in St. Moritz. And it takes place in a castle. It's beautiful. You take this amazing UNESCO World Heritage train ride to there, and everybody speaks Romansh, and it's just a beautiful area, better skiing, and there's no security. It's laid back. World star chefs there. And like every person floating around is a millionaire or billionaire. Really powerful people. It's a week before Davos. A lot of people go there. They don't go to Davos. That's just the crypto stuff. There are so many of those types of events, secret invitation-only events, and they're under boring titles, and they hold them at the Aspen Institute or other places, and they make bigger decisions there. And yeah, sure, Great Reset is a big decision. They're telegraphing a lot. Here's what's going on. I'll cut the fat for you guys so you can kind of understand what the elite are trying to do. Okay? In the 20th century, it was the first century in human history where we invented an existential technology. Prior to that, we had muskets and warships and cannons and Gatling guns and all kinds of cool things that could kill lots of people, but they couldn't extinct the human race. There was no musket that could be fired and then suddenly we all die as a species. Then, in the 40s, we invent nuclear weapons. And then suddenly everything changed. We went from a local tragedy to a global tragedy. If that technology was misused, the entire human race disappears. That was the first moment where we started realizing as a species that global governance isn't about placating the ego of a world conqueror, Alexander the Great, or Caesars, or Genghis Khan, or something like this. This is more about preservation of the human species. So all these transnational bodies started forming to regulate both the use of the existential weapons, but also nation conduct, United Nations and so forth. Okay, so fast forward to the 21st century, and two things have happened. The quantity of existential technologies is increasing. AGI, The great goo problem, nanotechnology, gain-of-function research, and synthetic biology. Much easier times acquiring weapons of mass destruction. Also, just natural overconsumption and anti-environmentalist capitalism, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And the other thing is accessibility of these things is shrinking. We went from one nation state to a collection of nation states, powerful big states with a world order preventing smaller states from getting them, to 100 guys can get together, set up a lab, do gain of function, and create an aerosolized Ebola with a rabies special. Game over for humanity. Where's the regulation for that? How do you even regulate that? Because they can do it in a secret island, not tell anybody about it. It's pretty scary shit. That's what's coming. Couple that with high population density and the fact that the world is running out of non-renewable resources. Massive coral bleaching, a lot of desertification coming, ice caps are melting, all these other problems. These are known facts. Okay, we had a finite window of time to take advantage of stored up wealth that accumulated in terms of millions of years of natural resources, and we're exhausting that for the Industrial Revolution, for the industrialization of mankind. And that's not sustainable. It's a shot in the arm to get you ready to go, but you have to then transition to something that is. The problem is that transition requires new forms of governance and economic models. So when you talk about New World Order, it's really about that existential technology problem. And it's about the fact that the default world order is not sustainable. So the elite, because they're elite in their minds, not in reality, they think they're smarter than everybody else, and they think they have the moral right and the mandate to decide the direction of the world, transnational governments. And the only tool they have is a hammer. That's been the theme of tonight. And they keep batting down the nail. And that means one world government through unelected bureaucrats at the top. And you put titles and names and transnational bodies and all these other things and pick winners and losers. And because they have a lot of political influence, they can cause wars and do all kinds of things. This is what the elite do. And they were right if that was the only game in town. They're not. What our industry does with blockchain technology, how we operate, is that we offer a different way of doing things. Institutions that don't require people. Things that can't be evil by design. Things that respect your privacy and your rights as an individual, but actually do achieve a lot of regulatory ends. And different economic models that can reward a long-term outlook as opposed to a short-term outlook. So basically, libertarian capitalism 2.0, a lot of the benefits of democratic socialism without the costs. Sounds pretty good. That's why our space is worth $2 trillion. And some of the elites are buying into the space because they realize that this is potentially a better approach. Because the problem with hyper-centralization of power, as the Soviets learned, is that when the guy at the top decides to abuse it, you can't stop it, and it gets worse every single generation. Okay? So that's what's going on. There's a great reset in that people are scared at the top, and they're very worried that left to our own devices, society is going to burn out, and the Fermi paradox will be proven true, and humanity will go extinct through some existential technology. Either an AGI kills us, the Terminator scenario, or some magical nanotechnology paperclip machine kills us, or a virus kills us that we designed ourselves, or some other unforeseen technology destroys the mankind, the human race. Big problem. Okay, so you just have to understand that all of these things are interconnected. And if your only mindset, you're 80 years old, 70 years old, is let's do what we did with the Marshall Plan, let's do what we did with transnational governments, these types of things, the UN, then you're going to say, well, we need to be more aggressive, which means we have to go from optional to compulsory. We have to go from advisory to in control. We have to go from elected to unelected. We have to go from free market to controlled market because it's too dangerous to let these people run around and do their own delights. Oh, it's not somehow surprising that people born into billionaire class, born into royalty, People from large political families that have been reelected for centuries somehow feel that this is the way to do things and that they have the moral authority to do that. But, we Americans, we're a little different. We don't exactly have a lot of respect for that. So I like to believe that the blockchain option is better. And that's the great fight of our times. But you have to acknowledge the wisdom gap. You can't have your foot. This is what Max Tegmark talks a lot about in Life 3.0. You can't have your foot at 100 miles an hour on an accelerator. And that's technological progress. But then on wisdom progress, the wisdom behind the technology, go 10 miles an hour. The gap gets bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. Easy way of thinking about it, you invent the car, and then somewhere along the way, you invent the safety belt. That wasn't because one day you woke up, you're in the shower, and you're just like, man, maybe I should make a safety belt. No, here's what happens. You're driving the car, having fun. You hit something, you go through the windshield, or maybe don't even have a windshield. You fall out of the car runs you over, and you die. And the person who finds your corpse says, man, maybe it's a good idea to make a safety belt so that doesn't happen again. Okay, so usually the technology fails in a way that we don't like in order for us to build something or regulate it in such a way that that failure doesn't happen again. That's fine when the tragedy's local. The guy who invented the wingsuit, I think the first wingsuit or the first parachute, I think he died in the first maiden voyage of testing it. Didn't invalidate the concept. Just same for the hot air balloon, I think. People die. Things happen. We move on. Technology gets better. We improve. The wisdom gap closes. You cannot do that with existential technology because the first failure is the last failure for all mankind. The technology kills you. So you do the wisdom first before you do the technology. Before you make an AGI, you think really carefully about the philosophy of the AGI and the problem of control. Stuart Russell writes about this. There's a lovely book about it, AI and the problem of control, and the ethics of these things. And sometimes you decide just because you can do something, maybe you shouldn't do that thing. Okay? And so this is where we're at. There's a wisdom gap. And because humanity has shown to exploit that gap in unproductive ways, and many tragedies are occurring, and the proliferation of existential technologies, it's causing the ruling class of the world to say, God, we need to solve these existential problems. And the only way we know how to do it is using the problem solving of the past. Domination, control, authoritarianism, force, propaganda, psyops, centralization of power, unelected dynasties, and so forth, and suck it up, buttercup. Meanwhile, they're completely ignoring the fact that a social revolution is happening, demanding for fairness and human rights and egalitarianism and institutionalization of ethical ways of treating people and blockchain technology and inclusive accountability, these basic things. Oh, those upstart ripper-steppers, who cares about them? Or, oh, they're a threat. They're going to prevent us from building our utopia that will save the human race. So we got to beat them. And I say this whole rant. I don't know who needs to hear this, but siding with WEF is not a good look for Charles, just saying. You're a fucking idiot. Did you listen to anything I just said? God. I just went on like a 20-minute rant explaining what's going on and what people are doing and what WEF is about and all these other things and how we got here. Watch the tape again. Watch it again and again and again and again. You'll get there. God damn it, you'll get there. Ah, we're going to redo the podcast at some point. I'm building a podcast studio. It'll take like a year to get done, but we're talking a lot about the format for it. And and we're just thinking like, how do we better communicate with people? We also are thinking about adding a Twitch live stream as well, and more platforms. Maybe even doing some short clips and putting them on TikTok and other things like that. My EA is very very social media friendly and savvy, and he's always trying to get me to change the way I do things. It would be nice to get a higher quality set of questions sometimes and a better dialogue. I really like the Twitter Spaces because I've noticed that the questions and dialogue is just very different from this format. I still do this format because some people take advantage of it and value of it, and I enjoy it, but it's pretty tiring sometimes. You go on this long point and you're like, and then they say, well, why did you say that? I said the opposite. I don't know. It'll be fun though. Charles is having a lot of fun today. Well, hell yeah, I woke up in Nolans. I ate so many beignets, I think I gained 3 pounds just eating beignets. I'm going to have to go on a fucking protein-sparing modified fast. Lose all this weight. Get on Rogan, please. Yeah, I'll do it. We'll get there. Just give us a little bit of time. There's some stuff we got to do. Some unfinished business. Got to go back to Bermuda. Talk about these things. We're going to get it done. When will you be burning ADA? You're mad as hell, but you're the one saying you eat pizzas with the elites, not me. Well, yeah. I get invited to parties. You go and talk to them. You see them. It doesn't like, cover you with mud and stain you. You get to know people. You get to see where people come from. Believe it or not, the elites are human beings. They're not snake people. And if they are snake, well, Mark Zuckerberg might be a snake person. But outside of him, there's no serpent people. They're humans like you and me. Go to the bathroom like you and me. You sometimes stand next to a billionaire at a urinal. You're just peeing. He's peeing. You're washing your hands. Sometimes they're washing their hands. Usually you get a better soap. There might be like a bathroom attendant. Maybe they have like the nice high quality cocoa butter, moisturizer for your hands. But guess what, guys? Whether you're at a Buffalo Wild Wings or a Michelin star restaurant in Copenhagen, it's the same. Same basic framework. So you engage with people, you talk to people, and you get to know people. And you say, well, why do you believe what you believe? I talk to a lot of world leaders, a lot of presidents, a lot of prime ministers. You sit down with them. Why do you believe what you believe? Now, conspiratorial thinking, it says those people are completely empty suits. And there's some race of lizard people, some evil cabal of people, like, doing weird hand signs and shit. And that cabal of people tell those empty suits what to think and do. Now, it's certainly true there exist proxy governments in the world, Vichy regimes in the world. And throughout human history, there are secret societies. Many of them exist. Okay, great. Your exalted order of the Golden Dawn, the Illuminated Order of Golden Dawn, your Illuminati, Europeans fucking loved secret societies in the 17th to 18th century. Half the founding fathers were Freemasons. Great. And that's fine. Okay, these things do exist, and so they sometimes even had a cultic, hermetic order of the Golden Dawn is what I was thinking. They have occultic bends, and they sometimes claim they have magic powers and commune with spirits and these types of things. Okay, but at the end of the day, each and every one of those people were human beings. Have a heart, a brain, eyes. A lot of them suffered from syphilis, had to wear fake noses because they were too popular with the ladies back then. And they were just trying to figure out a way to stay in control and in charge and make meaning and sense in a world that was not as meaningful and senseful as they wanted. And they're just as scared as you. We live in a weird world where power is delegated by wealth and prestige and these other things, and it allows people to get separated from each other. It isn't a war of the elite from the not elite. You meet elite people all the time. You could be standing in line at Dick's Sporting Goods, and the person in front of you could be an Olympic champion. That's an elite person. They do things 99.997% of the world don't do. It's not about that. It's about the attitude, the interaction, the friendliness. Is that person a complete whirlwind of an asshole? Really just a walking condom commercial like Mike? Is that what that person is? Or the nice guy or gal or the nice person, chummy. Wow, what an interesting person. So humble. That's why I love Charlie Daniels so much. I was so sad when he died because, Charlie Daniels, one of the nicest guys I ever met. He was extremely affable, very friendly. The dude played with Elvis, Bob Dylan, Johnny Cash, Willie Nelson. He played with everybody. And he double went down to Georgia. Come on, great song. So many amazing hits. He played like 6 instruments. And at 80 years old, he's still just jamming like fucking crazy. Go to the Golden Nugget, hit the buffet, go over there, $30 for a ticket. You watch Charlie Daniels play. You're going to have a good night. You meet him, you could see him on the streets of Tennessee. Nicest son of a bitch you ever meet in your life. And you wouldn't even know that he's Charlie Daniels, right? That's elite, but friendly. He's a person. He remembers we're all the same at the end of the day. The problem we have is when we start creating the other. The woke cult does this. Politics does this. Genocidal dictators do this. Religious extremists do this. The other. Vaxxed, unvaxxed. The unvaxxed. The other. They can't go to the restaurant. Yeah, I was playing with somebody the other day. Masari invited me to an event at Denver. At the particular restaurant in Denver, they apparently were checking vax cards. There's no mask mandate or vaccine mandate in Denver anymore. They canceled that. So this was the establishment making that decision. Show me your vaccine card to have access to this private event Masari is holding. I had actually my card in my front pocket. I said, I don't have a card. And she gave me this evil look. Like, how dare you, unvaccinated person, be in my presence. Rah! Like I'm a monster for being in the unvaxxed category. I said, actually, I found it. It's right here in my pocket. And she just didn't know what to do. She was just like, but she's like looking real close at the card. Say, can I see your ID real quick? Sure, here you go. Just want to make sure you're on the list for the guest event. She's looking at the card, trying to, is this counterfeit? Is this not? I want to hate this person because he's unvaxxed. He's anti-science. He's a bad guy. But now he's vaxxed. What do I do? Oh no. She's the victim of propaganda. She's the victim of the otherism. And you see it everywhere you go. Why families are splitting apart. Why grandchildren are disowning their grandparents. Why wife and husband are breaking up. Husband and husband are breaking up. Wife and wife are breaking up. People are breaking up. People are hating each other because of otherism. We fear the elites because the elites promote the ones who are evil, otherism. They divide people in a marionette puppet game to gain power. Because in the war, in the conflict, you can sell weapons to both sides. In the war and in the conflict, if you're the observer above, no matter who wins, you win. And if we're fighting each other, we're not fighting them. Look at the blockchain industry in a nutshell. Ask yourself that. Think about that. Really dig into it. Okay. You're a maxi, a Bitcoin maxi. Our view of the world is the only right one. Everything else is a shitcoin. You got Max Kaiser says, take the orange pill. Everyone else is wrong. We are right, and they're evil, and we're not. Meanwhile, every single legitimate blockchain venture is selling auditability, timestamping, inclusive accountability, irreversibility, all of these things. We have different philosophies about how to get there, and we have the same set of enemies and the same conceptual problems in selling the field. Yet they sit there and say, we are the enemies. And the people who sit above with the marionette puppets, the elites that you don't like, oh, they're loving it, drinking it from a cup. As long as we fight each other, we're not fighting them. And we're weak when we're fragmented. The old saying, a house divided cannot stand. And that's where we're at. So the real thing that you have to avoid is otherism, and you have to know where it's there. You have to know. You have to see it. And whenever you find yourself having a visceral reaction to a person, a concept, an ideology, a visceral negative reaction, especially one that you know so little about, that is not informed by thought and critical thinking. It's propaganda. You've been propagandized. And the old Hoskinson's axiom, I'll say it again, if something is suboptimal, it doesn't make sense, it's harmful, but yet we keep doing it, it's because someone's making money. That's as simple as that. If you're propagandized for some reason, it's because someone is making money or getting power from that. Those are the elites we have to fight. That's the situation we have to fight. And how do you fight them? By not playing the game. Don't succumb. No one who is a normal person is so irredeemable that you should hate them. And the people who do heinous things, almost always, themselves were victims somewhere along the way, or suffering from some condition somewhere along the way. You punish the acts, you protect society, but you have compassion and empathy for people, for the circumstances that they're going through. But you don't allow your mind to succumb to otherism and propaganda. If you do that, you're no better than the elites you purport to hate, because you're falling prey to the games that they're playing, and you're contributing to making the world a worse place. So the elites are lizard people then. Yeah, Mark Zuckerberg is. I give him a show of shit. He's having a bad week. You think crypto's having a bad time. Lost $500 billion market cap. Let's see here. Hello from the Dolomites. Charles, thank you for everything you do. Lucien Wu Toy. That's a beautiful mountain range, northern Italy, and some of the prettiest sights you'll ever see in your life. Google Dolomites and thank me later. Hi, Charles. I'm a student journalist still in university. What's something I could do to improve the way journalists communicate with the public through blockchain verifications? Well, Dawson, this is a great question. I deal with media all the time. Tomorrow, horrible books coming out, written by a purported journalist. Boy, I'm having fun just trashing that shit fiction. And Dawson, my problem with journalists is you're entering a field with fucked up incentives. When you get your job as a journalist, your incentive is to make money for the person who owns the publication, not tell the truth, not do research, not think about objective reality, to make money for someone else. So the name of the game is, if making money is getting eyeballs and clicks, do things to get eyeballs and clicks. Why do people write about Elon Musk? Is it because of the vision? Some. Most because he's got tens of millions of followers all around the world. He's this whirlwind of magic and chaos and controversy and so forth. So you just mention the keyword Elon Musk, comes up in people's feed. Oh, I got to click that. What's Musk doing now? Oh my God, he named his baby something weird. Woo, Musky. That's simple. So how do you make it better? Well, you make it better by changing the system. To win the game, you got to change the game. So you're a student, you're entering this space, you want to do better. Well, let's start with veracity bonds. When you write something as a journalist, more often than not, there are no consequences. The libel laws work in a certain way, and I've been reading them recently, but they work in a certain way where most often than not, you can just write stuff that's horrible, and as long as you got some proper sourcing, you're legally in the clear. So wouldn't it be cool to have veracity bonds connected to a story? So when you publish something, You don't just publish it and put your brand and name and institution's name and reputation on the line, but you put good earned money on the line. Crypto, because the other money is becoming worthless. A veracity bond. Well, that's interesting. And what happens if what you've written turns out to be factually incorrect and there's some sort of way of checking that? You lose the bond. So when I read a story in the future where journalism's not so bad, I say, is there a veracity bond for this? Yes. Okay, how much? And who checks it? Seems pretty credible. Good. That's something. Is there a veracity bond? No. It's the bat boy at the grocery checkout line. I guess he's getting married now. Okay, it's not a real thing. Okay, so you think about what incentives do people have to curate information, to attest that the information is correct, and what incentives do people have to consume and share? And when people share what you write, how much vouching do they have for it? All of you listening, you probably have a social media account. I'm simulcasting on social media accounts. So when you verify, when you share something on your Facebook page or Twitter for a retweet or any of these things, do you read it? Do you check it? Do you sit down and think, what I just read, am I 100% certain, absolutely certain that that's right? Or do you like, oh man, that's a fucked up headline. I didn't know that guy did that. Click, retweet. Twitter started warning people that you probably should read the article before you retweet it, because more than 50% of people were retweeting tweets for articles just based on what they read in the headline. They actually didn't click the article and read it. And they're sharing it. They're propagating it. So another side of information is not just the veracity of the document, but we as the surrogates, as the viral spreaders, as the people who are actually propagating it across our social graph, need to vouch for it, put reputation on it, let people know the story. When you retweet, I retweeted without reading, I don't know, it's unverified. Do this in the intelligence business. Any piece of actionable intelligence in the mosaic of intelligence is labeled. If you have an informant, you have any of these things, they'll say, well, we don't really know. It's not a very credible thing. Or the assessment is milky. The human doesn't agree with the OSN, doesn't agree with the SIGINT. There's this issue. There's this issue. Satellite reconnaissance shows different things than what the drones were showing, or we think there might be an issue here. And then you try to put it all together and then decide the preponderance of the evidence. Why don't we do this with media? Because it's hard, it's expensive, it's time consuming. So if you want to be effective, go be the next Rupert Murdoch and be the Rupert Murdoch Dawson who builds a blockchain-based journalist system that has veracity bonds and has a new network for how people share and vet information. It creates incentives for people to read things instead of blindly click like or dislike or have a visceral reaction and so forth. And change the advertising model like Bats has done. Learn about Brave and Bats. Master that. And create incentives for investigative journalism. The stronger the incentives are for investigative journalism, the better those incentives are for investigative journalism, the better investigative journalism we have, the stronger it is, and we'll get it done. Or you could enter the system that gave us CNN and Fox News and all these other things of hyper-partisanship and the politics of division and shallowness and clickbaiting and chasing and so forth. It's a dreary field, and it's sad because the media is necessary to call truth to power. It's also necessary to help us as a society understand reality as it is, because we don't have the time. And it's a broken institution because of wrong incentives and bad leadership. We fix institutions in cryptocurrency space. Now you're thinking politicians should use that bonding model to verify their BS. Oh my God, could you imagine living in a world where every political statement is backed by money? Yeah, they get a little bit more careful with their speech. They just start pulling a Bill Clinton. They'd be like, that depends on the meaning of is. Mhm. 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 Hey, Charles, we share the same birthday. Many of you know I was born November 5th. Good day. Remember the 5th of November. Scorpios unite. How's 34 treating you? I'm 34 going on 54. I feel so old. I've lived a hard life and I'm trying to get back to being young again. Although the hairline is not so kind. I hope you're faring better, Adam. It looks like from your picture your hair is better, but I don't know. I don't know. Is that a current picture or an old one? This is a great question. You have plenty of money. Why no employ more people for faster development of Cardano? Okay. You can't hire any more people for linear processes. There's a very well-known series of laws and principles in software development that adding more people to a team after a certain point does not actually produce better results. Okay. It's kind of like a bathroom mat that's already fully saturated or a sponge that's already filled. You can pour as much water as you want on it. No more water is going in. Okay. The sponge is saturated. And we're at capacity. There's hundreds of people floating around, more than 15 companies floating around just on infrastructure, and everybody's working their tailbones off. But things have to be built in some cases in linear processes. Others are parallel. There's a modular architecture. The node team is very different from the network team, very different from the consensus team, very different from the Plutus team, very different from the interfaces team, very different from the Daedalus team, very different from the Adrestia team. And that's just core infrastructure. Then you have the constellation of things like people working with dApp developers. Those are very different than the formal methods team, very different from the academic team, all working in parallel, including the Hydra team working in parallel. More than 15 companies, hundreds of developers. We can't hire any more people because they're saturated. Each team is full capacity. Every now and then you get an opening. Every now and then you find that you can do something in parallel and you add more resources, which is why we have float teams. Then there's the QA teams and the DevOps teams and so forth, and they pre-do as much work as possible. Can't hire more people. Can't hire your way out of it. Good work takes time. Building cryptocurrencies is hard. Don't believe me? Look at the $10 billion of hacks. Charles looks like a dev. No, I'm a hype man. No technical skills. Don't know what I'm doing. Charles, what does this shirt say? It's a duck hunting place called Honeybreak. I don't want the Digibyte question. Oh, this is actually a good one. I think it's a nice one to end on. Can you dumb down sidechains? Okay, so one of the design requirements of Cardano that I wrote, because I wrote the original white paper for Cardano. Why Cardano? Wrote the whole thing in like 5 days of coffee and madness and drinking lots of lattes and just staying up way too late. But basically, I said there's this idea of a Cardano settlement layer and an idea of a Cardano control layer or computation layer. I never settled on a common vocabulary for it, so let's call it computation layer. Your settlement layer is a root of trust. Your control layers are things that live above it. And basically, the settlement layer has a narrow view of expressiveness and computation. and it is really reliable. And then you use something about that to spin out chains above many computation layers, and each one has a different computational model. EVM and Plutus and this and that and this and that and this and that. Okay. Now, because you have a strong root of trust, you can use that to bootstrap permission protocols in the control layers that are very fast. So there are protocols like BFT Simple, like the Tendermint protocol, OBFT, Rapid Chain, hundreds of these things, Algorand in a certain respect, certain variants of it, that run in a BFT mode that has a permission quorum. You could take the stake pools and sortition them in some way, pick a quorum and have them run the network for 5 days. So you get all the benefits of a permission network. You get synchronous communication, you get fast finality, you get high throughput. BFT Simple runs 1,000 transactions per second. But you get the trust model of the root of trust of the underlying network. And it's basically what these Binance Smart Chain guys are doing and the rest are doing. It's not rocket science. It's a known thing in system design. Ouroboros was designed this way. So as we roll out the sidechains designs, what we're going to do is show how the community can propose and launch a sidechain. They don't need to go ask permission. There's no foundation that sits there and thinks and cogitates, ooh, what sidechain should we have? It's a process. And where we excel is we make sure we build a really beautiful bridge mechanism and other things to be a standard kit of things you do to stay compatible. But then when you launch it, you get the OBFT quorum. Stake pool operators get multiple revenue streams because they get ADA plus the sidechains they're maintaining. Win-win for everybody. And now you have a different computation model. You have different network logic, different rules for consensus. You have different computations with different notion of smart contracts. Oh, extended UTXO, so hard, I can't figure it out. Oh, Plutus functional programming, so hard, I don't know. Oh, no. Fine, fuck it. Do accounts in Solidity. Okay? Great. You're an overglorified node developer. Huzzah. Go do it. Okay? Don't complain about it. Just go do it. That sidechain exists. It's there. Better, faster, cheaper than Ethereum. 1,000 times so. Pretty simple. That's the model. And you got that with Ouroboros. We designed the protocol, painstaking design over a 6-year period. And we thought a lot about it. We wrote a lot of papers. Okay, we thought really carefully, how do you build a coherent model? Proof of stake sidechains, 2018. Parallel chains, 2018. OBFT, I think it was 2019 or 2018. All the Ouroboros, Classic, Proust, Genesis, Crypsinus, Chronos, Ceros. We call that one Ledger Redux. It is just a whole bunch of them. Okay, all of these things. Mithril. If you have cross-chain communication between the sidechains and the main chain, you'd like that something on the sidechain can talk to something on the main chain and vice versa, and they don't have to possess the full ledger for that to be secure. You need a proof certificate. OBFT, you can do that simply. Proof of stake, you can do that simply. You can exchange certificates. You don't need the full chain. Okay, it's a sidechain ecosystem. That's why it's so fucking crazy. All these people are Cardano can't scale. Oh, it's like Mr. Plinkett. My God, I feel like I'm George Lucas getting fucked up by Mr. Plinkett going after the damn prequels. Oh, I don't like this way. It's really bad. I mean, this is where we're at. Guys, it's not rocket science. A lot of this is settled science. A lot of this is settled design. The very people you praise when you attack Cardano have embraced similar architectures. Only ours is better, faster, cheaper, and more secure, and it's backed by actual rigor, for God's sakes. Which means that when the network is under high throughput in this model, it won't break. And you don't have to kick it to turn it back on like a fucking weird-ass refrigerator. It's that simple. So dumbing it down, slow breeds fast. Common infrastructure, open ecosystem. If there's enough value that something real can be created, it will be created, and stake pool operators get multiple revenue streams. So the Cardano of 2023, when we have a big sidechain ecosystem, and you're an SPO, you make ADA plus. And you're running lots of nodes, not just one node. Your hardware requirements go up, but your revenue goes up, and you become a different type of node. The user, either an agent, human or otherwise, non-human would be a DApp or a machine. Human would be you, the user. You get all these messages being passed in some sort of pub sub, and you get all of these certificates, proofs that come through, and you can check them. It's not rocket science. The papers are there, the designs are there, and they're being rolled out this year because we're in the Basho era. We're in the Voltaire era. We need to do these things. We have to connect Catalyst to the main network. We have to connect Mamba to the main network. Raw, just like that. But once it's done, there's a model for how to do it. And then you, the community, will do the next one. It's like medicine. Learn, do, teach. We are in the do side. We had to learn. That was the last 4 years. And once we're done with do, there's to teach. Okay, so teach you how to do it. Then you do it. Then you teach somebody. And then you build a big tent. Lots of money. Big ecosystem. Night, Chuck. I think that's sound advice. I'm just looking to see if there is a... That's such a fucking creepy question. Charles, when are you going to let me come down to Boulder County and photograph you? Come on, man. Ask it different. I'm sure you're a nice guy. Please. Oh, it's too late. Okay, it's midnight here. Jesus. Tomorrow's going to be a fun day. Gonna get up, work out, gonna get it done. Let's see if there's anything else here. Good one to end on, huh? Charles, is there a single aspect of Ethereum that is better than Cardano, in your opinion? Well, Ethereum in its current instantiation is a subset of Cardano. Once sidechains come, everything Ethereum is, Cardano is. They're combined together. It's like the real numbers to the integers. There's a lot more of them, and they do a lot more things, but the integers are contained within the real numbers, okay? So from a technological viewpoint, layer one, I'm not so worried about it. The layer two ecosystem is fascinating. Rollups in particular, there's a lot of magic there, and I admire that greatly. And I think we can do better as an ecosystem. And there's $150,000 of funding from Catalyst to chase that. There are some ventures that are chasing that. And we are researching rollups for the Hydra Tail protocol in particular. So I think a lot can be done above and beyond what we're doing. And the Ethereum space is doing interesting things there. And they're really impressive things that are happening. There is an interesting thing about community building. You know, if you're intellectually honest, Ethereum has a humongous community. I personally sometimes have some issues with that community above and beyond their distaste for me. I think there's a lot of elitism and arrogance in it, and smarminess in it. And it's the man bun syndrome. Yes, those. And that's a personal taste and preference, but it's undeniable the pervasiveness of Ethereum. It's undeniable that those people are also quite effective. There is a problem-solving mindset that exists within Ethereum that is seldom seen in the rest of the cryptocurrency space, where people don't just bitch and complain about things or go to some sort of ideological religion. They actually try to solve stuff. And I think it's a testimony to good leadership from Vitalik. He's a very solutions-oriented person, and he's a very execution-oriented person. And while there's depth and philosophy there, there's always an engineering mindset of build it, build it, build it, build it. and there's a persistence there that is quite impressive, and I admire that. And at times, I think we can be, as an ecosystem, a bit too academic, whereas they're the other extreme. The pendulum goes all the way over, and they're very engineering focused, academic second. Although we're both kind of meeting in the middle as projects. I think the other thing that Ethereum has done very well, they've been a very effective communicator as an ecosystem about blockchain utility that's non-monetary. Before Ethereum, the name of the game was Bitcoin, altcoin, token somehow connected to finance, and not a lot of diversity. And then there was ideas about extending financial capabilities, color coins, master coin. These were the projects that I grew up with, my generation. And they were all about saying, let's increase what you can do, like issue a token or do a contract or something like that. But Ethereum came around, and then suddenly we have NFTs. And suddenly we have all these other things, oracles and video games, and all kinds of weird experiences like metaverse stuff. It's pretty cool. And Ethereum was the first mover in that. And there's still a lot of strength and momentum in that community about dreaming big, building big, doing things a little differently. And there's an amazing renewal year after year that is enduring, and a culture that doesn't take itself so seriously. It's a taste and preference thing. You go to consensus, you get a lot of people suit and tie, a lot of business being done, very very professional. VCs there, a lot of. You go to F Denver, and it's Vitalik wearing a bear suit, and unicorns and songs and merrymaking and drug rooms. Literally the third floor of the castle, laser light show, and a guy's like, "Oh, I love Ethereum. It's so great." Yes, that's how it was 4 years ago. They haven't lost that. It's not an act. It's not a show. There's a culture there, for better or for worse, and it's very different from the Cardano culture. The people who are in our ecosystem, they tend to be, in many cases, there's a bimodal distribution. One tends to be blue collar, and they're very philosophical motivated, and they hate institutions, and they think they need to be better. And then there tends to be a academic white collar or professional white collar, where they grew up with a love and appreciation of the processes we follow, and they like that there's a return to that. It's a meet in the middle of both blue and white collar in that respect, and it's very diverse as a result. And I've met incredible people make whale books, artists, photographers, governors. I've met doctors, lawyers, computer scientists. It's a very big tent. The Achilles heel of the Ethereum movement, though, is their inability as a movement, in my view, to understand where they have blind spots or cognitive biases or undue unfair thoughts. And maybe I'm just because I've been on the receiving end of it, but not a lot of people, rank and file in Ethereum land, will acknowledge that Cardano has done legitimately interesting things. Like the interview recently with the author who shall remain nameless, and a podcaster asking if Cardano is a legitimate competitor to Ethereum. There was nothing said there. First, it was, well, Cardano, I don't know much about it. Okay, that's fair. You leave it at that. But instead, it's, I don't know much about it, but I believe there's nothing there. They've had difficulty launching smart contracts. There's so much magic in what we've done. So much careful thought, so many thousands of conversations, so many thousands of meetings, and countless hours writing code and doing science and building things that go into who we are, what we've done. And that's all in the open for everybody in the space, for better or for worse, to utilize. You can't, with a project that has committed so much work to paper, just offhand dismiss it because of your personal distaste for the founder. And the fact that an entire ecosystem in some way has succumbed to that, that doesn't bode very well for their future, because that's ultimately to their detriment. If you're smart, you learn from other people's mistakes. You learn from where other people have not done things well or done things well. Competitive analysis intelligence really helps you out. You see this in great engineering. Biomimicry is a great example of that. For any structure, any design, anything you look at, you always ask, did nature already do it? Because if it did, I have a starting point. Who am I to argue with millions of years of evolution? Go copy it. Right out of steel. Steve Jobs used to say that. Everything we've done is a potential point of conversation and inquiry and interest. And we fostered an environment in our ecosystem because of the academic process where we love talking to people. We love engaging. We love debating. We love peer review. We love the discussion. We love making things better, being smart. We love collaboration. We write papers with so many people. It's not an echo chamber. If you look at the authors on the papers, you look at the code, there's so many contributors who don't work for us, who came in for one particular thing or another because they happen to be interested in it. Or look at our work and build and improve our work, even when they disagree with us. So if you have a blind spot to that amazing movement, all you're doing is saying everything that they've learned and all the pain they've gone through, we as an ecosystem are just going to go replicate that and pay the same price that they paid. Why would you do that? Does that make any sense? If you're walking and you see the guy ahead of you fall into a pit, would you be like, well, I have to fall in that pit too? No, you walk around the pit. Pretty common sense, right? But that's literally what's happening in many cases with consensus research or other such things, or the fallacy of the accounts-based model of being the panacea of scalability. It's nuts, is what it is. The dog barks, caravan moves on, and people sometimes do and say things because of the incentives they have, but I'd say that's the only flaw in that community that really holds them back. And it's not just Cardano, it's other things like Solana and so forth. There's goodness there. Protocol design needs to be improved, but there's goodness there. And all of these different protocols, whether it be Harmony or IOTA, there's something there to learn from and be inspired from. And if you have a beginner's mind and you're humble, you can work your way through it. You can just go to chalkboard. You can think about it. You can solve it. And you can get to a better place. And if you have an ecosystem where that humility is lacking and there's an arrogance, all you're doing is you're just shooting yourself in the foot. Anyway, is what it is. Until next time, everybody, Charles Hoskinson signing off from warm, sunny Colorado. As I said and promised, we began February 21st. We ended February 22nd. Until next time, my friends, this was a fun 2 hours and 44 minutes.